Hey, hey. Welcome, everyone. Welcome. Oh, my goodness. It is so awesome to be here at Resolvecon 2023. So awesome. That's the part where you clap and everything. Come on, thank you. Yes, very exciting. So it's an honor to have you guys here in person, and to everybody watching online. Thank you so much for being part of this. So this is so exciting. So everybody here in person, we're going to be streaming together here. So you guys are going to help us make a really awesome stream, and hopefully you have a great time too. We have some of the best presenters I've ever met, the smartest Resolve minds I've met here in the building with us right now. Except for Colin Kelly, he couldn't be here. He's sick, so he had to go back, which really sucks. So I know there's a lot of people disappointed about that. I'm probably the most disappointed about that, but we're still gonna have a good time. I'm really thankful that you guys are here. So so I'll hand this over to Dan. If you guys don't know, Dan is my partner in crime. Basically, everything that we do for our company would not be a thing without Dan. And so, he's been my bro for a long time, and he's also our host today. So give it up for Dan.
Thank you. So like Casey said, guys, we are in for a awesome weekend of learning, of creating. And one of the things that we hope is instilled here is just a passion to learn and to be creative. And we feel very inspired and driven to encourage creative people to make awesome stuff. That's what our whole company was founded off of, just making awesome stuff and doing it together and learning together. And I'm so grateful and blessed and humbled to be amongst such wonderful creative people along with you. So I want to touch on a few things here. You may have noticed in the back there are some golden 3-button mice awards. And I hope some of you went, huh, when you saw those. And that is because we are going to be doing our first ever Davinci Resolve Battle Royal on Sunday. So it is going to be 2 teams of 4 people and a team lead, a coach. They're going to be competing against one another to create a short film live. So later on today, we'll be putting a sign up over there by those golden 3-button mice, and you can sign up. And then on Sunday, we will announce who is on the teams and who the team leads are. And this will be an exclusive in-person only event that happens here on Sunday evening. And that could not have been made possible without the wonderful support of NVIDIA Studio and Action VFX and our partners at ASUS. So we're so grateful to make that a thing. We hope you would consider making that part of your experience, maybe stepping out of your comfort zone and being creative along with a team of other people, with, of course, the guidance of one of our talented and knowledgeable presenters. So I need my notes for this other part here. Some housekeeping stuff here. If you need to leave the room during a presentation, if you need to use the restroom or something like that, we ask that you please go through that back door there. Do not use these double doors because it's really loud and distracting, and that sucks. And we don't want to do that. Please keep your phones silenced, and we hope you guys just have a wonderful time here. There's a little area back there where you can take pictures with your favorite presenter and catch them during the breaks and during the breakout times and all that, and just hope you have fun and engage and learn together. This is so cool. I want to give a special thanks to the sponsors that made this whole thing possible. Blackmagic Design, so awesome that they made all this happen, and they also made the cool software. There's that. I want to thank Puget Systems for giving us this wonderful system that we're using here, that our presenters will be using throughout the weekend. And also Motion VFX, who is going to be our sponsor for not just the event, but for our first presentation as well. So I think that is everything. So without further ado, you guys, let's get into this. I'm going to welcome our first presenter to the stage. You guys should all know him by now. He's known for his incredible teaching technique, and his wonderful smile. And you've seen his face pretty much everywhere else, so we thought, you should probably see it here. Give it up for Mr. Alex Tech.
Thank you very much. That was a nice introduction, wasn't it? Not bad. So yes, my name is Alex, better known on the internet as Mr. Alex Tech. Hopefully some of you know me. Some? Yeah, a few. I always do a little intro when I do these things. My name's Alex, and I'm an idiot, is how I usually introduce myself. I opened with that line at an official Blackmagic training seminar, and it went down quite well. So that's always good. I call myself that because I am a YouTuber. I'm a content creator. I'm here almost by luck. Kind of happened, now I'm here. I'm not an industry professional. I'm not a working editor. I play around in Davinci Resolve and I make stupid videos on the internet. And now I'm here talking to you guys. So there you go. First thing, I just wanted to say real quick, welcome, because I'm first. So welcome to Resolvecon 2023. This is cool, isn't it? Yeah. There are some familiar faces, some people I recognise from last year, and lots of newbies as well. So yeah, welcome. As I am first, gonna take it pretty easy. Haven't got anything prepared, just gonna make it up. Okay. I've got some stuff to show you, but we are going to take it pretty easy. We're going to have some fun. I've got some real small, actionable kind of tips and tricks to show you all, which hopefully, everyone learns at least something a little bit new. Fingers crossed. And yeah, we're just going to have a play. I'll show you some little time-saving tips in the way that I like to do things within Resolve. Last year, when I did my presentation, someone in the comments called me the king of convenience. So I like that. I'm stealing that for myself. So thank you to whoever that was. And you'll be surprised, well, you'll not be surprised to know, we're sticking with that mentality for this one as well. Super easy, super quick, super convenient, so that you can spend less time worrying about all that stuff and more time just actually getting on with creating. So, what are we talking about? Content creation. Technically, all kinds of video editing, video creation fall under content creation. But the type of content creation that I do, and the type of content creation that a lot of people online are using Resolve to do, is this YouTube-style content creation, which is quite unique and different from some other forms of editing, because you're essentially making the exact same video over and over and over again, just with a different script. You start from the same place, you're usually the same person, using the same location, same equipment, the same deliverables. So there's lots of time to be saved by getting rid of things that you do all the time. So to me, next level editing in Davinci Resolve for content creation isn't just about the super flashy visuals, or in the case of a lot of YouTube these days, that caffeine-fueled crazy edits, which I'm far too old to keep up with these times. It's about making the stuff you want to make quickly, simply, easily, in a way that's repeatable, while also removing as many barriers and as much repetition as possible. So that's kind of what we're going with. Fast, simple, and as repeatable as possible. So that's kind of my intro basically done. I'm going to show you some little Resolve tricks, tips, show you how to create some reusable assets. Won't go too much into that because the fantastic Patrick Sterling is coming on after me to do some more of that, but I'm going to dip my toe in and show you a bit of everything in between. So, sound good? Yeah. Amazing. So my first thing that I want to mention is, in order to work fast, in order to be proficient in Davinci Resolve, you need to learn the system. It's much easier to be creative and do the really creative stuff you want to do when you know the system. And I know, like, I'm a systems guy, so this comes naturally to me. Anyone that knows me knows I'm sort of system focused. For others, probably the other way around, so this may seem a little bit boring, but knowing the system makes being creative much, much easier, because you're not thinking about the little things. You just go, I want to make this thing. I know how to get to that location. So to get us started, we're going to play a big old game of Resolve Bingo. Kind of. I've got 10 random, simple, but hopefully useful tips in Davinci Resolve to get me warmed up. I'm going to show you some cool stuff. And if you know all 10, congratulations, you're as much of a nerd as I am. So there you go. So number 1, hopefully you can see this. There you go. So number 1, first thing I'm going to show you, something that I do often, over on the media page. Does anyone use the media page? Some people do. Generally, some people, you just skip to the edit page and drag and drop and off you go. Yeah. There's something really useful about the media page, and I don't use it that often, but I do like to do this. And it's the fact that you can set favorites. So on the media page, we've got this media storage, and then you can see we've got all of our sort of file locations over there. That's a bit fiddly to drill into. So what I like to do is grab my folder, drop it here, and it'll automatically, there you go, automatically drill in. Now I'm assuming that file structure looks very similar to other people's. That's not just me who has copies of copies of copies of copies. And that'll drill straight into there. So on my home system, I have a folder called YouTube. I dump all my projects in there. And then whenever I open Davinci Resolve, I can set this folder as a favorite. So I can right click, add folder to favorites, and then it sits within this favorites area. Now that's handy because that's a live look at that folder. So if you're in the middle of a project, you've downloaded some stuff, you've put it within that folder, you jump over to the edit page, and the media page, and that will automatically appear within that folder. So you don't need to refresh anything, it's just always there. And those favorites pull through every project that you open within that database. So if you start a brand new project, jump over to the media page, you have all these file locations saved as your favorites, it's good to go. You don't need to do anything, it's all there, ready to go. While I'm on this page, tip number 2, not really relevant to all of that, but I showed Casey this the other day and he didn't know it was there, so I'm going to show you guys. If you take a video, right-click, you can extract the audio. It's a really quick way of just getting the audio from a video. So if we click Extract Audio, it's just going to rip a WAV file from that video, and it doesn't just create it within Davinci Resolve. If I right-click, open the file location, it's created a WAV file for us to use. So it's just a simple little trick to know, because you can really quickly get the audio out. If you've done a video and you need to get the audio out really quickly to send it to someone, you can do. Tip number 3, you're all working on laptops. Laptops are great, but they're a bit squished, generally speaking. So there's a little trick I like to do whenever I'm working from a laptop, which I do quite often, and that is pop out the media pool. So if we right-click within the media pool on the master bin, we can open as a new window. And it pops out, which then means I can close the media pool, which just frees up some space on my page. You can do this as many times as you like. You can have loads of different bins open, and it just makes life that little bit easier. What I also like to do when working on a laptop, has anyone ever looked at these teeny little icons, top right and top left? They're really easily missed. But if you give that a click, it makes your inspector only half the screen. And over on the left, same again, which means even if you're on a teeny tiny laptop, you still get a full width timeline. Again, really simple, but if you're on a plane and you're trying to do some editing and your timeline is this big, that can make life much easier. This is a good one. You can save all of your audio, everything that you've done on a timeline, into a single preset. It's got it's your Fairlight preset, and it's a Fairlight configuration preset, and it's super useful. So let me show you this really quickly. If you've set up a timeline and you've gone in and you've set your audio levels, you've set up a couple of audio tracks, maybe you've opened up the effects library. Let's grab the dialogue processor. We'll just drop that on the track. And we'll use the male voiceover just to save some time. You've set everything up for this timeline. You can do multiple of these. So if you've got a studio setup, maybe an out and about setup, all that sort of thing. If we jump over to the Fairlight page, you can do the same thing. You can do EQs, you can do dynamics, you can do all the audio stuff you would do probably at the start of every single project. But now if we go to Fairlight, presets library, there's a drop down of all the dynamics and equalizer presets, but at the bottom there's a Fairlight configuration presets. So I'm going to give this a name, call this Alex for now, and you can make as many of these as you like. So if you open a new project, you go here, you can just apply that and it'll pull through, which in itself isn't that exciting. But now, if I go back to the edit page and make a new timeline, just using Control and N, there's an option to use Fairlight preset. And if I give that a tick, I can choose all of those configuration presets that I've created. So every single project, I can go, I'm doing a studio, YouTube video, I'll load in my studio preset. And it's got all of my EQ, all of my effects, all of my volume, done. If you use a different one for something else, you can have them all listed there. So if I just go to Alex, create timeline, I've got all of my tracks, it's got my effects on there, it's got all the levels already done. It saves you that time every single project. The easier you can make this sort of thing, the more likely you are to continue making these videos. Content creation, all that jazz. Let me jump back to my other timeline. Who makes use of this little menu? 2 hands. A couple more hands. Do you use the F keys? Anyone? F11 for replace? Yeah, some hands. So I like this method, especially for videos, just because it's nice and visual. But if you make sure that you've got your dual screen viewer open, so we've got this teeny little icon right up here. If you don't see it, it may need to just close the inspector. And then any source material, so anything from your media pool, you can drag over, and then you've got these different insert options. Now, the one I want to reference is replace, because it's my favorite one. And again, we're going back to that mentality of if we can replicate some work we've done, if we can save ourselves time so we don't need to do the same thing again, winner. So down here, I have an audio track, and it's just got some music on it. It's got some keyframes, because I just basically keyframed the levels, nothing too exciting. But I want to replace that song with something else, but I don't want to have to redo the work that I've already done. So if I open up, I've got an audio tab in here. I'm just going to select this. Hopefully that's not too loud. And then on the timeline, make sure that you select your sort of primary track using these A1 and A2. So you select the destination where you want this to replace to happen. Put your playhead at the beginning, and then I can either hit F11 or I can do my drag, replace. That song's been replaced, but it's kept the keyframes. So again, if you've done a big edit, you've done stuff, and then you've changed your mind, you don't need to just copy and paste attributes or start again. You can literally go replace. It's kept the length, it's kept the keyframes, it's kept all the levels, it's done all that sort of stuff for us. Now you can do this directly on the timeline as well. So this is just a clip of Davinci Resolve 18. We've got a zoom on there, we've changed the position, some pitch, some yaw, dynamic zoom, and tilt shift blur. Now if I've decided that I don't like that, I want something else there, something that already exists on the timeline, like this Resolvecon screenshot here. If you make sure nothing's selected, hold Control. Let me just make this a bit shorter actually. Make sure it's not selected, hold Control, click, and as you start dragging, you'll see the cursor will change to this replace icon. Drop it in the position, release. Now that screenshot is there, but it's got the same zoom, position, pitch, yaw, dynamic zoom, and effects that we had before. So again, made it once, do it again. What I quite often do, if I've got a timeline for social media or whatever, I'll just start with an old timeline which has nothing to do with what I'm doing, but I've already done some edits, it already looks quite good. Just go through and replace some stuff. And then you've got an edit and it sort of looks like your previous one with new content. You don't need to repeat yourself, you can use little tricks like that to save yourself some time. Number 7, and a few more, is tabbed timelines. Does anyone use tabbed timelines? Some hands. Cool. I don't often, well I never used to, because I don't often work with multiple timelines within the same project. I do a little bit, but I don't find myself jumping back and forth. But what I do use often, multicams and compound clips. And I never realised that tabbed timelines are perfect for those as well. So if we click on this little icon, we've got this button here to enable our tabbed or stacked timelines. And then we get our little tabs across the top, and we can click plus, change to a different timeline, and off we go. But the reason I find it particularly useful, I've got a compound clip here which just contains my face and this text. But if I right click, open in timeline, if you have the stacked timelines open, it opens a new tab. Anyone that's worked a lot with compound clips know you drill into it and then you have to go back and it's a bit of a pain. This means that I can simply go back to the main timeline, go to within the compound clip, let's just turn the text off, whip back, and you can just see it updating live. It makes life much easier. If you want to get really fancy with it, over on the far right, there's this little fella, and if we give that a click, we can open multiple timelines at once. So I'm going to close the effects one, open the effects one down here, and again we can go, yeah, we'll make changes to this. Just put something extra in there. Go back to the main timeline, and we can see that compound clip reflect on the main timeline. It just makes working with compound clips much, much quicker and easier. Get rid of that one. And number 8, subclips. Who uses subclips? Anyone make use of them? Oh, only a couple for this one. Anyone just never heard of them? A few hands. Cool. Good. Let me open up some footage. Let's just dump this down here. So this is a long piece of footage. It's like a minute or two, a couple of minutes. And I only want a small section of this. So I don't want to have to cut it and then render it out. I could use in and out, but that's a bit janky. So we want to turn this longer clip into a teeny tiny clip that's super easy to manage because I'm going to use it repeatedly throughout future projects. And that's when subclips comes in. So I'm going to double click to open it up in my preview. And then we're just going to find the point I want, which is this little sort of zoom, fly in. We'll do I's for ins, O's for outs. And then we right click and we can create a sub clip. It asks me to give it a name, so I'm just going to call this like Farmer Alex because it's my new farming show or something like that. And then we have a use full clip extents button. So if we tick this, we still have access to that full 2 minutes video, but it's just sort of trimmed down into a shorter section. If we leave this unticked, we just have this teeny tiny section. So it depends on the use case. I'm going to just hit create with that unticked. And then we have Farmer Alex within the media pool. I drop it on there, and it's just that short section. Now, the cool thing with this DJI clip, I can get rid of that. So we've got rid of the source material. We just have this tiny little section from that main clip we can use over and over again. And we can put that into a power bin. So again, every project we open, that short section of the one particular clip we want to use over and over again is there ready for us to go. Which leads me on to tip number 9, power bins. So if I click on my 3 little dots here, show power bins. I assume everyone knows about power bins. Cool. So I could drop my Farmer Alex in there. Any project I open, that small section is available to me to drop on the timeline, and off we go. Cool. Tip number 10. Tip number 10 is a little bit longer, so I'm going to catch my breath, have a quick drink. Anyone on full 9 yet in the bingo? No one knew all 9? Oh, one person did. See if we can catch you out on number 10. So, number 10, presets. If you're a content creator, creating simple presets is a huge time saver. There's everything, you can create pretty much any preset within Davinci Resolve, but the one we're going to have a quick look at is text presets, because you can make text presets in literally minutes, and you can enable something called versions. Does everyone use versions in Fusion? A few hands. So versions, a big hand at the back. Versions are super useful, and you can make these versions appear on the edit page as well. So let me give you an example. I'm going to open up my effects library. I'm going to go to titles. I've got a demo text. I'll pop this on my timeline. And there it is. Real simple. Sits within my effects library. It's a demo text plus, and it just says Mr. Alex Tech. Not that exciting. But if we scroll up to the top, we have versions 1, 2, all the way to 6. But we're just going to focus on 1, 2, 3 for now. If we click on number 2, it's a little teeny tiny subscribe button. And if we click on number 3, it's a terrible video editing related joke. So there you go. So you can contain multiple different presets within a single preset. That preset you can move to your laptop. So then you've got it everywhere. And it's one thing, super easy. It's a settings file. You could email it, put it in a Dropbox, whatever. So it's super duper useful. And they're incredibly easy to set up. So let me show you. So effects, titles, grab a text plus, put it on my timeline. We can start on our first one here if we want to, but I'm actually just going to click on my little magic wand, Harry Potter icon, as I like to call it, in the top right-hand corner to jump into Fusion. But don't panic if you're not a fan of Fusion. It's really simple. We're not doing much in here. We have the inspector open, and we have the same text plus controls you're probably always used to. So let's just change this to say Mr. Alex Tech. And change the font, we can change the size, the color, do whatever we want to make this look however we want it. So if you use a title screen in all of your YouTube videos or for Instagram, whatever, make that look however you want it. Then at the top right, there's this teeny tiny little sort of 2-page icon. It's called versions. If we enable that, we get versions 1 to 6. So from here, we just click on number 2 and we do the same thing. So this one I'm just going to put, oh, I can't spell. Subscribe. And let's just go to shading. Shading I know looks odd, but we can turn on the red shading, change the appearance to this third icon, which is the border fill. Change the level to text, round that off. I don't know if any of you YouTuber peeps in here, but there you go. You can do that really quickly just using a Text Plus. Text Plus, there's loads you can do with that. You can animate things, do all sorts of stuff. This does work for animations too. So if you've keyframed things, you are limited because you can't add additional nodes to this, but you can add some modifiers if you want to add sort of the follower modifier on there. You can do all sorts of fun stuff. If we go to number 3 and then just put hello, just because, you know, can't think of anything else, but let's turn that off. So you just create as many of these as you want. Once you've done as many as you want, you can do 3, you can do all 6. Quick note, actually, before I go into it. If you've done one you don't want, select one of the other ones. So I'm going to go to number 1, right-click on number 3, and there's an option to clear. You can get rid of it, so now we just have the 2. On this template, down here within our nodes, we can right-click, settings, save as, and you don't need to put this anywhere special. I'm just literally going to dump it directly onto the desktop. You do want to give it a name at this point, so I'm just going to call this Alex, so it'll be nice and easy to find, and hit save. And then from here, we open up the effects library, go to templates, edit, titles. Let's find that folder, settings, we can just drop that in there, and as you can see, it's just appeared within our Fusion titles, and it's good to go. You can drop that in a very particular position on the first time of saving, but it's much easier rather than having to drill into things and this, that, and the other. Just do that drag and drop method. You can then share that alex.settings if you want. Any device, repeat the same process, and they'll have it too. And now if we jump back over to the edit page, it's there. Sometimes you need to refresh, which can be annoying. You need to just close Davinci Resolve down and bring it back in. But this time it's all good. We have Alex, drop it on there. We have our versions 1 and 2, and it's good to go. Make those for all the different text things that you use, and again, saving time, saving yourself from having to repeat the same thing over and over again. Versions. Cool. It's also, quick note, really easy to copy it on the timeline. So again, makes life easy. You don't need to keep digging into the effects library because you just make a new one and then change the version. Copying on the timeline, I've talked about it a million times before, so I won't bore you all, but the Alt key, Option key, you all know it, all use it. Best key ever. Yeah, some, yeah, cool. So the Alt key has loads of uses. It's a modify key. If you want to copy something on the timeline, just hold Alt, click, drag, and you'll have a new one. So it's much easier than copying and pasting. If you've got linked clips, so over here, we have this video and audio linked. If you only want to select one, you hold Alt, and you just give the one a click, and then you can select the one. If you want to add keyframes, you hold Alt and click to add keyframes within the curves. Alt's a really good key. If you don't want to learn all of the keyboard shortcuts in Davinci Resolve, because let's be honest, no one does, there's millions of them, just learn the Alt key. It'll make your life way easier. So there you go. So that was number 10. Anyone get bingo? No bingos? Yes! Sweet. I'm done. I'm done early, Casey. That's it. I'm going home now. No one got bingo. As mentioned, our friend Patrick Sterling is coming on after me, and he's going to be talking more about creating assets within the Fusion page. He's going to be doing all sorts of fun stuff, doing macros. And then tomorrow, me and Patrick are going to be running a workshop where we can sit down with you all and show you some more of that type of thing. So if that sounds interesting, cool. If that sounds really boring, I understand. So don't worry. It sounds amazing. That's what we like. Now, just talking about presets, something else which I do use all the time, Motion VFX. So Motion VFX make presets, they make packages for Davinci Resolve, and they've actually just released the Resolvecon 2 pack, I believe, and it's completely free, and it's just for this event. So if you want some free presets, we have titles, effects, there's like backgrounds, intros, lists, logo, lower third, all that sort of stuff. It's available now, I believe, so you can go download that for yourselves and have some fun with Motion VFX. I use Motion VFX. It's very clear that Mr. Mostyn uses Motion VFX. There's a subtle hint somewhere that I think Darren uses Motion VFX. So we all do use Motion VFX. It's just super handy. It goes back to that mantra of it's easy, it looks good, it's simple, it's repeatable. You just drag them on your timeline and off you go. So there you go. How am I doing for time? Not bad. Next up, I'm a big believer in using tools, the built-in tools to do stuff. I know that sounds really obvious, and it is really obvious, but I am a big fan of using tools to do stuff. Even if you look at the tools and go, I don't know what that's for. I like to look at what they do by default and go, how can I make this work in my favor? And there's a lot of things within Davinci Resolve that actually you look at and go, where's this here? And then you work backwards and you can realize that it actually is really handy and again can save yourself some time. So I've got some examples. I'm going to find OpenFX, the transform. Does anyone use this transform tool within OpenFX? Couple of hands. Not many, a couple. So let me drag this on here. By default, it looks like the transform tools. So it doesn't really look that exciting. We've got X, Y, zooms, rotations, width, height, pitch, and yaw. So again, doesn't look that exciting. It looks like it does exactly the same thing that the standard inspector tools do. But it is quite useful. I just realised it's a good face, isn't it? If we go to image adjustments, you can round the corners. Now, someone just said, ooh, so that's good. Seems like a really simple thing. I work with a brand, I edit for a brand, and they want rounded corners on everything. So having that there is super useful. You just go, yeah, transform, scroll down, rounding corners. You could do that in Fusion. You can make a template. This OpenFX transform is available in Fusion. So back home, I have made myself a macro, so it's super easy. Just drag and drop. Again, Patrick will cover that sort of thing. But if you keep going with the rounding, funnily enough, it goes round. So then you can have a circular little webcam corner cutout. If we zoom this out, move this to, move this wherever we want it, put it in the corner, all that sort of thing. We have a super simple little webcam cutout. And again, really obvious. They have actually introduced a new tool in 18.5 which allows you to do that as well, but just knowing that the transform tool is there and it can do that is really, really handy. Don't forget that, just open the media ball, let's just find anything. Let's just grab that one. Once that's done, for us to grab this clip, it's not the perfect example, but if we were to do a replace, we could then just steal that. So you do that once again, you can copy the clip with the transform on there, do a quick replace with another clip, and again, every single project, you start from a base, you just do replace, and you don't need to continuously set these things up. Saving yourself time, repeatable, winner. If I go to the beginning, another great example for this is, let me go find it again within the effects transform. This is a compound clip. This is one I showed you at the beginning. It's just my big face and this editing tricks motion VFX, which I've scribbled on. But if we go to OpenFX in the transform, there's also interactive canvas. And then if we make sure to have underneath our preview window, OpenFX, you get corner pinning directly on the edit page. So again, I've set this up already. We just click in the corners. You click in the actual sort of red boxes. You don't need to go right to the corner. And then you can just drag. So I'm going to put my face on a billboard so my mum thinks I'm successful. And then if I just hide that and hit play, there you go. And you can do that perspective warping just by using those. You can even if we open, let me remember, animation, canvas, keyframes. So you can keyframe that as well. So obviously, if this was a video clip, I've just put it on an image, you'd probably want to do some tracking, but just really quickly, you're trying to do something a little bit snazzier, a little bit visual. You can use the corner pinning, tag it on there, maybe drop an adjustment clip on there, put some dynamic zoom and some camera shake. You can make something look a little bit jazzier than it originally did really quickly. Corner pinning. Now, another really good example of this, I did demonstrate it earlier, is, I just realized I missed something earlier. I'll come back to that. Bonus tip, because I forgot to mention it earlier. So let's go back. How did I miss that? Don't know. But how many times have you done this? Either intentionally or accidentally deleted audio and then realized that you want it back. 10 minutes later, you go, I want the audio back. Any ideas how you get it back? Can't undo because we've edited for 10 minutes. I saw a hand, a couple of hands.
Match frame it and then drag it back in.
Yes.
Match frame function.
So just F. So put your playhead over it, hit F, and what it will do is find that clip within your media pool, highlight the in and out of the section that that clip is, and then you can either just click and drag and you'll get the whole thing back, which as you can see is the exact same length. Or if you hover your mouse over your preview, there's the little sound wave and you can just drag that down, put it on there, highlight them both. If you want to relink, get them back. Bonus tip I forgot about. There you go. Now I've lost my place. Yeah, another example of stuff I like to do. This is tilt shift blur. So this is only available within the studio version, but there is a little way that you can get around it and fake it. It's not as good, but you can do a fake version in the free version, which I'll show you. But tilt shift blur is something that I do often. It adds a little polish to things. It's a little bit overdone, but I like the way it looks. So there you go. It sits within the effects library. So let's just search for tilt shift blur. I'm going to drop it on this drone footage. This is generally what most people think of when they think of tilt shift blur. It's drone footage. It just gives you a real shallow depth of field sort of look, which makes things look a little bit miniature. And it's become popular within that sort of droney world. But what I like to use it for is for guiding viewers' attention. You can use the tilt shift blur to highlight things really quickly and easily. Again, it gives it a little bit of extra polish. So if we was to take this example, it's just a screenshot. It's nothing exciting. I do loads of screen recordings. I'm always doing highlighting things, trying to demo things. So this is the Resolvecon site. Let me just copy this. I could just put that in my video. Let me get rid of the preview. Like that. And then I could voice over that, but it just doesn't look that nice. And if I'm talking about the dates, for example, of when Resolvecon is, you kind of have to look at that and really move your eyes around to try and figure out what I'm talking about. Whereas, if we give it a bit of zoom, I like to give things a bit of pitch and a bit of yaw. Some people love that, some people hate it. Grab tilt shift, pop that on there, use the on-screen display keys. You have to make sure you've got your Resolvefx open. Just to put that on there. Let's just turn the dynamic zoom on as well. It's probably a bit heavy, so let's just knock that down a bit. And there you go. We're displaying the exact same thing, but now you have a pretty good idea of what I'm talking about. It's relatively subtle. It looks a bit more polished. We have a little bit more movement, but the main thing in focus is the date. So when I'm talking about the date, it's the first thing that your eyes are drawn to. You can obviously mess with all the attributes within the inspector if you want to change that and make it a bit more dramatic, but it's something I use all the time because in however long that took me, 20 seconds, we've gone from that to that, and it just adds that little bit of polish. Tilt shift blur. It's also really great for photos. So I'm going to do this really quick. I've done a few slideshows, and I've made slideshows for people because they've asked me to do some editing and make some slideshows. So there are a few ways that you can do really quick slideshows. So within the generators, there is a paper generator, which I really like. It just looks like paper. So I've got this photo. Let's just make this a bit smaller. Let's grab the drop shadow, put that on there. Here's a real handy tip. Within here, there is a under coloured border. But if you drop that on there, it goes around the edge of the entire composition. However, if we right-click on our photo, we're going to open in the Fusion page, do the exact same thing within the effects template. Let's just search for the coloured border. Because we're in Fusion, it will pull through the resolution of the thing we have active rather than the actual full composition. So we can apply the coloured border, mess with all the attributes, back on the edit page, and then we have some way of displaying an image, which again, 20 seconds and just looks nicer than it did before. Now, if, again, voiceover, I'm talking about this lovely photo of wherever this is. If on the next sentence, I wanted to talk about this little cabin, I could talk about the cabin very generally. We're looking at this, and again, people are going to have to figure out where the cabin is with their eyes and then look at it. But again, with a few seconds, let's just zoom this in. Bit of pitch, bit of yaw. Change the positioning. Tilt shift on there. Pop that on there. Maybe once again, can't go wrong with a dynamic zoom. This is the first section when we show the actual image, and then as we keep talking, we want to talk specifically about the cabin. We've got this shot, it's zoomed in, there's a little bit of motion, and people know exactly where to look. So again, easy, simple, repeatable, direct the viewer, winner. If you are on the free version, you can kind of fake it. It's not as good, but if we jump over to the color page, and down here, we have our windows. You can give that a click. We can open up just like a square mask. We can drag this around and do what we want. Really put a nice softness on the edges. And then we could grab the Gaussian blur. Never know how to pronounce that, but we'll pop that on there. And then we'll hit this button here to invert it, and you can do a very similar thing. So if you're on the free version, it doesn't look as good because it's not actually replicating that fall off and whatever, but it's a really nice way of doing a very similar thing. So if you're trying to highlight sort of one thing and get rid of all the riffraff, you can. So there you go. How long have we got? 10 minutes. Cool. The next thing I want to talk about, well, there's a couple of things actually. I'll really quickly mention just the fact that all of those open effects which you see on the edit page are available on the color page and within Fusion. So the color page, especially if you're a beginner, the color page is great for doing this sort of thing because it's just an easy way. You can do masking, you can do tracking. The color page is just an easy way to do those sorts of things if the Fusion is a little bit scary at the moment. So this is just me. And again, if we went to the masks, let's grab a circle one, put this roughly on my face. And we're going to go to this next little icon here, which is our tracker. I'm going to turn off perspective 3D because it usually causes issues, and this is a real simple track. We'll track that. It will track in no time at all. And then within the open effects, if we grab, it's right there, mosaic blur, there you go, done. So you blurred my face. If we jump back over to the edit page, within audio, knock my semitones down a bit, instant crime watch. So there you go. I've got a deeper voice. It's not plain, but I do have a nice, deep, disguised voice. So that sort of thing is the color page is great for. Other than the color grading stuff, you can do real simple masking, real simple tracking, and all the tools are available to you. Now, sticking with the color page. One of my favorite things in Studio, magic masks. Anyone else love magic masks? Play with magic masks? Lots of hands. Anyone use them for that proper purpose? Just like to mess around with some people. I use them just because they're fun. You get to do things quickly and easily again, which would take you time. Things like this.
Then there's the fact that there's a million different ways of doing things, but
I don't know why, I just thought it'd be funny. So as I was talking, I cloned myself out and had myself running like Jack Sparrow in the background. And again, that sort of thing would take you ages if you had to manually rotoscope it. Whereas with Magic Masks, you can do it in, well, we'll find out. You can do it in about a minute or so. So I've got this 2 clips here. There's the first one of me talking, and then there's the second one of me in the background. It's also very strange doing that on your own in the woods. So, yeah. If we drag the clip of me on top, and then we're just going to jump over to the colour page. Make sure we're on the right clip, which we are, and then we're going to jump over to Magic Masks, which is right here. And then all we're going to do, not even going to take my time with it, it's just a rough squiggle. Probably don't need that much, but there you go. The little red outline has appeared, telling us that it's found me. You can toggle that on by clicking this icon, which is the toggle mask overlay. So let's just, then we want to track, which is this little icon here, which will track back and forth. Nice quick system, so this won't take very long at all. And that's just going to do all of that tracking for us. I left it on faster, so we may need to tweak it slightly rather than the better, but I wanted to do it nice and quick. So now if we turn off the overlay, and then within the node, add an alpha output, drag our blue to our blue, which basically just means anything which wasn't tracked is now invisible. It's no longer there, so you can see what was underneath. And if we hit play...
Plus, then there's the fact that there's a million different ways of doing things, but no definitively right way of doing them.
And actually...
it's all very strange.
Looks pretty good. The edges are a little bit harsh, so let's just go back. You can see sort of it's a bit harsh there. So you do have all of these controls down here. We could have got a better result by clicking on better, but what I would tend to do is just add a little bit of blur, radius, maybe increase this radius a tiny bit, just to soften that edge. Doesn't need to be perfect.
Right way of doing them.
And there you go. That looks pretty good. Now another example of that, that's a relatively, I want to say, obvious way of doing it. You've got someone in front, someone behind, track. You can also use it to do other things like masking transitions, which again, people like to do. It looks kind of jazzy. You can just go from one scene to the next. And again, if you wanted to rotoscope it, which was the manual method, it would take you a little while. So we can make this instead.
What went wrong, and you can apply that for next time. So it's win-win, really.
Using Magic Masks. So it's just me, I walk off screen, and it's a real nice sort of masked transition to another one of these motion VFX presets. Keeping things simple. Quick note about this, this video was online, and lots of people asked me what motorized tripod I was using. I just made one leg shorter than the other and let gravity do its thing. So,
went wrong.
Keep things simple.
And you can apply that for next.
So, how do we do that? If I open up the effects, 4 minutes to get this done, sweet. Open up the motion VFX, we're going to go to the Resolvecon, and we're going to use the opener. There it is. We'll put this at the end like so. Now all I want for this one is the point where I sort of stand up and move.
So win-win, really.
So we'll go from about there. We're going to do a quick cut. And we're going to make a duplicate of that section. So that's the thing we're going to mask out. We still need the background to exist because it needs to exist sort of before and after. So we just want to make a duplicate, which we've got. And then if we jump onto the color page, once again, same thing. Let's find a good place to track. Let's just try it from right here. Big old squiggle. Let's do better this time and see how quick this is. Not too bad. Cool. Oh, we broke it. I think we actually did break it.
Power's out.
I think we've dropped the power somewhere. Well, you do that, and then you click on the next bit, and it just works. So, magic. That's it, literally
The
just.
desktop's light went out.
Yeah, we just had a. Don't use better; it can break break your system. If anyone wants to see the rest of that, let me know and I'll show you it in the workshop. But yeah, magic masks, you can use them for all sorts. You can use them for that actual method, that actual purpose, selective color grading, do all that sort of stuff. You can use it to do the silly running around, but you can also use it to do those sorts of transitions and everything in between. I guess it makes sense to go to some Q&As. Yeah. Any questions? Yes.
Are they really, are they in the file system, or are they just
Here, let me get you a mic.
pointers in the database?
Let me help you.
No.
Here you go.
I was wondering of the subclips, are they instantiated in the file system as real files?
Nope.
They're just pointers in the database, so you got to keep the original file.
Yeah, so it's essentially like a permanent in and out marker. It's just saying that the clip exists. We only want the time from 20 to 25 seconds or whatever it may be. So that's all you get. So
Any other questions?
Doesn't actually exist anywhere else.
All right.
So for match frame, I run into one thing quite often, and that's I'll cut to set audio 1, 2, boom mics, and what I use match frame for mostly is going to wires to clean up audio.
Mm-hmm.
When you hit match frame, whatever was in your source window before are the audio destinations. There is no way to actually show what. So if I hit match frame and I have 7 audio, but there was a stereo in the source window beforehand, it doesn't allow you to choose where to point those audio clips. And I don't drag and drop, and I just want a shortcut. And so, do you know a workaround for that? Because essentially, what I have to do is shortcut an insert, undo it, and then I'm allowed to choose where the destinations are.
Right, got ya.
Have you? Yeah.
Don't know a solution
Okay.
for that. No. I'll have to open one up and have a play. Would be my suggestion, and see if we can figure out a solution. But off the top of my head, no, I don't usually work with that many audio tracks. To be fair, so it's not something I've come across. But yeah, after this, I can grab the laptop out and we can have a look.
All right. Any other questions? Put your hand up. Here we go.
Oh, we're getting somewhere. We have windows.
So with the different versions inside of the Text Plus node that you were showing off, if you were to keyframe different animations per version, do the versions recall those
Yep.
keyframes? Okay.
Everything is literally specific to that version.
That's phenomenal. Thank you.
Yeah, it's really good. As I say, the only thing if you wanted to make a macro, so then you can add some additional stuff as well. But you can only keyframe sort of what's there, and you can't use any additional nodes if you're just doing that save as. But if you're going full macro, yeah. What I tend to do is I'll actually make a macro. So I'll...
Talk into your mic, please.
Sorry, forgot. Sorry, I'm in the way. So I'll make a macro. I'll use multiple nodes to create my macro, bring it back in, and then you can even do versions on a macro you've created. So if you make a brand new tool, you then enable versions, and then you can have 6 versions of that new tool, all with keyframing, animations, anim curves, whatever. In the actual settings file, it literally just replicates the entire thing 6 times, or whatever you need it, with the relevant settings. So we're back. Pretend nothing happened. Shall I finish that thing really quick? Where did it get to? Let's have a look. So Magic Mask, we're going to use faster. And we're going to go, let's go from about here. Oh, keep your fingers crossed, everyone. Come on. Come on. Just doesn't like that particular... Oh, let's go. Hey. Oh, it just doesn't like it.
All right, 2 out of 3.
2 out of 3.
Wow.
So apparently there's a bug in 18.5.
That's impressive.
Yeah, so there we go. Back to the Q&A. Any questions? Yes,
Yeah.
that it.
Get you in the
anyway.
back first. I'll come right back for you later, okay?
So there's a lot of presets that you can save with video, but when it comes to extracting the audio from the video itself, are there ways to save like Fairlight presets on that audio track? So like, let's say you accidentally delete the audio, but then you want to bring it back in. Are there presets that you can set for that?
Good question. I don't believe so. But you can. No. Is a short answer. I don't think so. Other than you can do very basic things like volume. So if you open up the audio or the clip within the media pool, you still have access to the inspector. So if you then change the attributes within the inspector, whenever you drop that thing on the timeline, it will have those attributes on there already. I don't think that works for effects. But if you've set simple things like volumes, every time you drag that audio clip back onto your timeline, we'll have the audio sort of correctly on there. But you can set, so obviously for things like, well, any of the audio presets, when you get your little dialogue box and you mess with whether it's sort of the voiceover or noise reduction or whatever, each of those you can save as their own preset. So it could be a case of you've applied noise reduction, you drag noise reduction back on there, the little drop down at the top, if you've saved presets within there, which is super easy to do, you then select your own preset again and off you go. So sort of a workaround, but it's not perfect.
Any chance you have a workaround for keeping power bins or moving power bins between project libraries? So I have clients that I create a library for if they have different major projects. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times you want to use the stuff and you need a power bin and you can't move it.
Yes. No, because you can't export power bins as far as I know. But what I would tend to do is build the bin within the media pool. So not within the power bin itself, just within the standard bins, because those bins you can right click and you can export. So you can actually export the bins. It doesn't contain the media, it just sort of links to the media, so you'll still have the media there. Adjustment clips or anything like that you've saved within the power bin would work. So what I would tend to do, build the power bin structure within your media pool. You can then export that bin, so then send it to someone else, they put it into they restore it, it goes into their media pool, and then they just drag that whole thing back into a power bin, and that's a way to sort of do it, if that makes sense. So build it in the regular bins, so then you can send it to someone else, they can just drag it into that power bin. Because at the moment you can't get power bins in and out, so I do it that way around. Might work, should work, I think.
In theory.
In theory, yes.
Right? Any other questions for Alex?
Oh,
all right, one more over here.
It's a minor thing. So like in Avid, you can clear the source monitor. Mm-hmm. If you're watching, you want to watch your program out and you're not using an additional monitor and you don't want to see an image on the source side. Mm-hmm. Rather than making a black frame and bringing it into the source monitor, is there a way to clear the source?
Other than going to the single viewer mode, so obviously you can go to the single viewer just to get rid of it, to hide it entirely. You can now get rid of the history. I don't think that wipes it entirely, but it might be. It does. Yes, you can. So if you get rid of the history, it just clears everything.
18.5, you can.
Yes. Cool. Oh, my presentation's going well, isn't it?
That was Magic Mask too.
That was Magic Mask as well. Yeah.
Better one.
Yeah, in 18.5 then. So if you go to the source viewer, the three little dots at the top, there's an option to clear the history. Yeah, and thank you to Daria. That does wipe everything, so then you end up with nothing within the preview window. There you go.
Are there any other questions?
Scared to ask.
One last question on the deliver.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't been able to find it. Maybe there is someone that I don't know about. Is there a way to deliver separately and go back to working? Because right now, if you do deliver from a project or a timeline, you're stuck. You
can't get off the deliver
you can't
page.
get off of it.
No. What I tend to do is I will stack them. So the render queue, you can actually put multiple different projects within the render queue. So if that is the instance where it's like I'm going to spend loads of time rendering, I'll save my deliver till later on. I'll work on all the projects, and you can just build up that render queue to go through 5 different projects in one big go. Again, I can't demo it, but if you, within the render queue, the 3 little dots I think it is in the top right-hand corner, you can see everything. So as soon as you go to one project, put something into the render queue, you can then open up another project and then see that render within the render queue. So then you can render out 5 different projects in one big go. So do all your work in one bunch, then go put the kettle on and have a cup of tea while it's rendering all 5 of your projects out. So that's sort of a workaround, but you still are stuck on that deliver page.
Great. Any other questions for Alex? Okay.
Cool. I'm going to go before I break anything else.
All right, guys, give Alex a big hand. That was amazing. Thank you for all those incredible time-saving tips. So I literally learn something new every time you share, man. So thank you so much. We are going to go into our first break. We're going to go. We're going into break a little early. We have a few things we need to take care of. If there are any questions or doubts that this is somehow pre-recorded, you can just put those to bed right now. We got computers turning off. We got banners falling down. Our pets' heads are falling off. Yeah, whatever. We're also going to be doing our first giveaway because our sponsors have given us over $44,000 worth of product and stuff to give away. So give it up. Thank you, Blackmagic Design, Audio Design Desk, Mammal World, Omniscope. We're going to be giving away a ton of different things. If you are here in person, you are already registered. Congratulations. You have to do nothing, which is cool. For those watching online, make sure you register. There'll be a link in the chat. You can click on that and get your registration in because we're giving away stuff to people online too. It's going to be amazing, and we'll be announcing the winners of those prizes when we come back from our break. And yeah, we'll see you here in a little bit. Bye-bye for now.
Check 1 2. Test 1 2. Check 1 2.
All right. Everyone take a seat. I think we are back up and running here. Broken things are fixed, quote. Fixed. We're going to do our best here, guys. Wanted to say, again, thank you for your patience and grace in dealing with all this stuff. We're doing this live, you guys. Quick note, if you didn't notice those little black notebooks in front of you, that's for you guys to take notes. And also there's a little gift in there for one of our sponsors, Audio. That is a year of Audio Pro for free, by the way. Huge thanks to Audio for making that happen. Give it up for them. That's pretty cool. Incredible service. Appreciate all the support. And want to let some winners know. Hey, Dave Morgan, are you here? Hey, you have won a copy of Beat Edit, the plugin Beat Edit. That will be emailed to you. Gunnar Peterson, you've won a copy of ADD Pro. Pretty awesome. It's an incredible sound design software. Congratulations. And online winners, Paul Cooper, you've won a copy of Resolve Studio. Congratulations. Blue Bergen, you've won a copy of Omniscope from Nobe Software, and one of our sponsors. Thank you. And Grant Benish, you've won a copy of ADD Pro. Congratulations. You will be emailed with more information on how you can get that. And let's introduce our next presenter. You guys, if you don't know who this is, prepare to have your mind blown. Give it up for Patrick Sterling.
Cool, thank you. Quick question, who is afraid of the Fusion page? Okay. You don't need to be scared of the Fusion page, but I have very good news, even if you are scared of the Fusion page, even if you will stay scared of the Fusion page. And that good news is that there are tons of people out there, like me, who are bringing the power and flexibility of the Fusion page to the edit page through drag and drop presets, plugins, and templates. That's very exciting, and that's what this little presentation is going to be all about. That's possible because of a system in Fusion called the macro system. Macros, mean a lot of things across lots of different pieces of software. If I say like macro in Fusion, who maybe knows what that is? Oh, cool. A few of you, but not a lot of you. Very exciting. If you've generally been using Resolve and pulling stuff out of the effects library, you've already been taking advantage of this really powerful feature. And one spot I love to show that off is in the effects library, which isn't called library anymore, it's just called effects apparently. In generators, under Fusion generators, we have this little contours effect. I love showing this off. And by default, we got some fun little like wavy lines. And in our inspector, you will notice this effect has those versions that Alex talked about. And if we click through these, this one effect becomes a whole bunch of different effects. I really like this 3, sort of this like topology effect. And if you pull up movement rate, it even gets like, that's really slick. How many didn't even know that this effect was in Resolve? Awesome, awesome, awesome. And the really exciting thing about macros and Fusion macros is that this effect was natively built in Fusion. And you can, because of that, open it back up in Fusion. In our inspector, we have this little button way over here that opens this effect in the Fusion page. And you can see all those different options. Our effect is represented by this little group of nodes here. All that wide range of what this effect could look like. If I double click to open this up, all of that was made with 4 nodes in Fusion. And using the macro system, it bundled those 4 together. And if you click this contours, you see all those same controls that we had on the edit page. And if you click any individual node, you can see the controls for that node. So what the macro did was take these 4 nodes, bundle them together, and sort of put them in a package. And on the surface of that package, it pulled out specific controls from all 4 of these nodes so that you don't need to go clicking through all of them. You just have this one master layer. And however you change these values, you end up with drastically different looks. I love this as a general demonstration of the Fusion page because it starts firing off some things that like, okay, you can do a whole lot with not a whole lot of nodes. And it's very exciting. We are not going to start with something as crazy as this. We're going to start with what I like to call baby's first macro. Because if you've ever been toying around in the Fusion page, you might have noticed, like they say, hey, the nodes are specific tools. But one of the most basic things you would like to do, like control the opacity of your shape or image or whatever, there isn't an opacity node. But using macros, we can make a very simple opacity node. I'm pulling up this little search bar with shift space, by the way. So to demonstrate, I'm going to create a background. That's going to be green. And if I add a little ellipse mask on that, we got a little green circle. And then normally if I was doing a simple like opacity fade, I would do that on a brightness and contrast node. And if I connect that and preview that, nothing changes. And by default, this controls the red, green, and blue channels, but you can toggle on the alpha channel for transparency as well. So now this gain slider, if I pull it down, that's our simple opacity. But we have all these other controls we don't really want. So what can we do is just on this single brightness and contrast node, I'm going to right-click and go to Macro, Create Macro. And it shows the one brightness and contrast node we have selected. And so then we have this visual representation. In larger projects, this can get pretty wild trying to sort through it all. But on one node, pretty manageable. You see the one node we have. You see controls or common, which here are these controls or settings pages. And we can see on the controls page, we have red, green, blue, alpha, gain, lift. We have all of these controls from over in the inspector. So this is where we are repackaging. In this case, we're only repackaging one node, but we want to simplify this for users. So I am just going to check gain. I'm going to rename this label from gain to opacity. And I'm also going to rename the overall tool to opacity. And if I just go to, I'll do file save in this instance, it's loading to a very specific folder where we are saving macros really in this initial use case. This is for when you will want to create a tool to just keep within Fusion. We're going to talk about the edit page really soon, and for that we have to do some like moving files around. But if you want to create a tool to use in Fusion, it's very easy. It takes you right to the correct location. It's called opacity. Just click save, and then, if this works, it should work. If I get rid of that brightness and contrast node, we are back to that background and ellipse. And now, if I just search, if I start searching for opacity, now we have a tool there. And that's the tool we just made. If I add that and preview it, we'll see the only control we have is a little slider, and it works. So some of, you can use this all over the place. It's great. Anytime you either have like a complex tool you've built for like completely internal use, you can package that up and like find it in that same search menu. It's great. Even for this, like, yeah, it's just one node. But if you only want to do this one thing, or maybe you're working with some other newer users or students who are going to like be searching for opacity, one, you can always explain this to them because it's very cool. But if you just want an opacity node, you've just made your own opacity node. It will stay in that folder in any project you open up. You'll have it. Very cool. And that is step one and as approachable as we can make this. And it can get, pretty intense. Oh, as I didn't say, this is kind of my life. For the last few years, like this system, it's not too hard to get started in, but the really, really exciting thing is that as powerful as Fusion is, it's got like particles and 3D stuff, all of this. You can make transitions, you can make titles just for use inside Fusion. Almost anything that you can imagine that you can create in Fusion, you can turn into a drag and drop preset on the edit page. And even more exciting, I think, is that you can take those, you can share them, you can spread them around, you can sell them. For people who dive into this, you can get started in the complete free version of Resolve and make some presets, and if people like them, you can bankroll Resolve Studio. That's pretty cool. So what we are going to do today, if I head back over to the edit page, in the effects library, you see a few main categories. We have transitions, titles, generators, and effects. And we are going to try to, as bare bones as possible, create baby's first transition, baby's first generator, all of those. So be prepared for these to not look very good. But the exciting thing is that we're showing off the system. You can make as awesome a title as you want, and the steps will be exactly the same for packaging that up. Cool? It's exciting? I think it's exciting. Okay, and we are going to start with a transition. Now, transitions are pretty interesting, especially to get started, because here's the other thing to know, is that you can build any of these tools from any starting point in Fusion. In the Effects tab, we have this Fusion composition. If you drag it to a timeline, that will get you into Fusion real quick. You can get into Fusion from any other clip, from a footage or image. But we're going to start building a transition in a pretty interesting way. If I go to transitions and just grab something like, also I'm using Alex's footage because I think it's funny. If I drag this arrow iris on as a transition, we have a few controls for that in the inspector, but we don't have that little Fusion icon because this is not a Fusion transition. This is just like it's transition. But if I get rid of that, we do have a few Fusion transitions, something like this little like block glitch. And if we check that out, we also have that little icon here. But we're not even starting there because I want to show off this really cool thing. If I go and grab the most bare bones cross dissolve. By default, this is not a Fusion transition. That's a fun word to say, Fusion transition. And it does not have that little button to open in the Fusion page, but I can right-click on that cross dissolve, and we have a convert to Fusion cross dissolve. I click that. Nothing changes in the video. It's still just a fade, but now we have that little option to open up. And if I do that, we'll see our very simple Fusion node tree. We have our media in 1, which is the clip that starts the transition, media in 2, which is the clip that ends the transition. And then we have this little cross dissolve group. If I open that up, it is just a simple dissolve node that is going from a value of 0 to a value of 1. This is built on anim curves, which I will talk about very soon. I could so easily just talk about anim curves. It's cool. But for now, I'm going to delete the entire thing. So if you are making your own transition in the Fusion page, you have so much freedom. All you need to do is figure out a way to start with what's coming through media in 1 and end up with what's coming in on media in 2. So to keep things basic, we are going to make just a simple slide transition. There are already like 5 different default slide transitions in Resolve, but you're going to make your own, so that's fun. I'm going to do that by adding a merge node after this media in 1 and connecting that media in 2. So now if we were to preview or go back to the edit page, this would just be that media in 2 the entire time, because all we've done is stick that media in 2 over this merge. But before we get to that merge, I'm going to add a transform node. And what we're going to go here, we want to control this slide option, right? Because we're going to have this off to the side, and then it will slide. So that is the one motion we want. And we're going to do that with anim curves. But before we get to anim curves, the one small speed bump we have is that this center, it is a point data, it's a point. Meaning, we have that x value and the y value. And anim curves deals with a single value. So how do we get a single value to represent this sort of lateral move? Well, we are going to do that by right-clicking and going to modify with vector result. Super cool little modifier. All the modifiers are cool. But we have an origin here, which is, we're going to leave that for now. Then we have distance, and you can see, hey, this distance slider is now just this lateral slide, but it is sliding that direction because of this angle. Helpful little hint, for just like motion graphics and stuff, if you ever want really cool pivot motion, if I just pull up this distance and then change this angle, now it is perfectly just like sliding around this center point. And if I change this origin, that would slide around the point from which it's orbiting. I don't know, you make like a little like atom motion graphic, something or other. Really neat, but we want that back at 0. So for our transition, we want to change this distance from a value of -1 to a value of 0. And this is where we finally get to anim curves. Again, we are on a modifier on a node, or on a value on a node, and we are adding another modifier on top of it. This is fusion. But, so now we are modifying this distance with anim curves. Anim curves, so cool, so cool. By default, there are tons of options we're not going to go over because we also want to do lots of other cool stuff. But by default, since this is set to transition, anim curves is going to generate a value of 0 at the beginning of this duration to 1 at the end. And then it's going to take that value and times it by the scale, whatever we can set to, and offset by the offset. So remember, we want to go from a value of -1 to 0, so we want this offset to start at -1, and we actually want to keep that scale the same. So it's going to start at -1, it's going to go up by 1, so now at the beginning, it is off, and just with that motion, it's going to slide in. You might notice this looks bad because with this little curve is set to linear. We have some really cool options here under easing, but I'm also a big fan of setting this to custom, more because like you have more control, but I also think it helps sort of communicate what all this easing is doing. So we have this straight line, which represents this lateral move. It moves at the exact same speed, and that's why it looks bad. But this little custom curve editor has a lot in common with the spline editor down here. So you can use some of the same keyboard shortcuts. Like if I just click F, it adds really subtle easing in there. If I want more control, I can select a single node and click T, and I get this little ease slider for the influence of the easing. So my little cheat code for a lot of animation stuff is if something's animating in, I want this coming out at an influence of 50. The second keyframe, I'm going to pull this the in up to an influence of 70. And if you just look visually, you can start to put together what we're going to do. Instead of constant the entire time, it's going to take a little bit to get into it, but then boom, it's off to the races. It's going to zip around, but then take even longer to ease into its final point. So now, sound effects are required. And this we can even preview right now. That's built on anim curves. This, it defaults to 1 second long, but anim curves is dynamic. So if I go back to the edit page, stretch this out, it will execute that move over the length of your transition. Very cool. The last thing we're going to add, which is going to be the first to get back to it, make sure you select it. Click this to enter the instance of Fusion. Sometimes where your Fusion effects are actually stored can be a little interesting. We're actually going to add one other cool thing here. After the transform, I'm going to add a color corrector node. And I'm going to add another instance of anim curves on saturation, just to demonstrate, and to demonstrate something really cool in a second. As this second clip slides in, it's going to start black and white, and then also become full color. So this isn't the most basic slide. So I'm going to right-click, modify with anim curves, and we actually want to keep these what they are, right? Instead of a -1 to 0, we want to go from a saturation of 0 to 1, full saturation, and that's what it is by default. But we also want that curve, but instead of setting that up by default, I'm going to go back to my transform, this anim curves. I think I'm going to do it this way. I'm going to right-click on the whole anim curves and just click copy. Back on color corrector, on that new anim curves, I'm going to click paste settings. It might mess up visually, but we got that same ease back. That did overwrite the scale and offset, so you can always set that back to 0 as well. But now, as that starts to fade in, you can see that's black and white, and very quickly gets like half saturation, then full saturation. Really simple. But the very exciting thing, that is a little bit more advanced, but I trust you all. We are going to package this up as a macro, remember? So we have access to add controls to that top layer of the folder. We're going to keep this one very basic. We're not going to publish any of like these scale controls or other stuff. The only thing we're going to publish is a toggle for turning off this desaturation effect. In a lot of these controls, over on the settings option, you have this blend control, which is kind of like the master influence or opacity just for that effect. So if I go back and look at as this sliding in, that's desaturated a little bit. If I pull blend down, it goes back to full saturation. It's saying, if you bring the blend down to 0, it's saying like, hey, don't do this thing I just told you to do. But this slider is a little not super smooth. I want a toggle. And to do that, ooh, this is cool. Right-click on color corrector and go to edit controls. Again, an entire presentation right here. I'm going to walk through the specific thing I want to do and sort of leave the rest up to your imagination. If I come to ID, we see all of the controls that live inside this node. There's a lot of them because it's a color corrector one. I want saturation 1, right? I'm assuming I want saturation 1. Oops, let me go check. No, I want blend. I'm going to scroll, I'm going to scroll all the way down, slowly, until I get to, maybe I can type it in. Hey, blend, it's at the top. So, this is wild. This gives you control to create, which is even wilder, or modify the way that any of these controls appear in the inspector. So by default, this is a slider. You can move it one way or another. But now that I've selected this, if I come to input control and scroll down, I have checkbox. And if I make sure this stays on that common or settings page, if I just click OK, blend does go to the bottom, but now it's just a simple checkbox. A checkbox which will go from unchecked at a value of 0 to checked at a value of 1. So it's on, so it's desaturated now, but when I publish this and rename it, I can name it desaturated or whatever. If I uncheck that, it doesn't do that extra effect. So you can pile as many nodes in there and just change all their blend options to be like, hey, do you want this? Do you want that? Do you want that? And the end user can really control what they want their effect to look like. So, hey, we've made a slide transition. Very cool. Now we need to get it to the edit page. There are also, of course, a number of ways to do this. I think I'm going to do the most simple, straightforward option. We'll see. The important thing to know, sometimes is that when you're making a macro or just grouping in general, I think I can demonstrate this. If I select this top transform option and then select the others, and then click Control-G to just make that a group, you see on this group, the background node is pulling from media in 2, which we don't want. But if I select this merge first and then the others, then group it, it's working correctly. This also sort of comes into play when you're publishing those controls. But for now, you just need to know we are going to select those. And instead of making a group, we're going to right-click and go to Macro, Create Macro. Gets us back to this page. You can see, like we said before, now these are all of our nodes as well as our modifiers on all of those nodes. So we've got a very simple 3-node tree here, and you can already start to see how it gets a little wild in this page. But for now, the only thing we want to publish is on that color corrector down in common, we want that blend, which we can rename to something like desaturate. We'll name this something like RC for Resolvecon slide. And now I'm actually saving as group. You'll remember when we've opened up like the contours effect or some other stuff, it has that little yellow group that you can double click to open up to see what's inside of it. You need to select Save as Group for it to do that by default. If you just click Save, it will sort of sum all of those down and it will just look like a solid node. And you'll have to like jump through extra steps and do a bunch of other stuff to get it back like explodable. But for now, we want Save as Group. I'm going to save to a little folder I made on the desktop. This is just like an intermediate space. You can save this anywhere, because once I do that, I am going to get back in there. Fusion it gives you this little .setting file. Now, in Fusion, if I open up Effects, Templates, Edit, we have titles, effects, transitions, generators. And if I open up any of these, you see all of, hey, we have the little Resolvecon, which is free. You should check that up. But titles, if you just click titles, you see all of the Fusion titles by default. You do not want to add them to your project. But we created a transition. So if I come to Edit, Transitions, sometimes you can drag that file we made right into this window. I believe it's a little finicky based on like what folders it like auto-generates different stuff, but you also have this option up here. Click these 3 dots, go to Show Folder. And now it brings you to the correct location where this transitions folder is stored. So I'm going to open that up. Just to also show this off, I'm going to add a new folder. I'm going to just call this RC for Resolvecon. And actually, if I just leave that, I don't know whether I need to open up something. I might. So now we've got that new folder we created. We got this slide folder. I'm going to move that over. Let Resolve think for a second, because sometimes it needs to think for a second. Oh, yeah, you see it sort of like move stuff around. If I open up transitions, we have that RC folder, RC slide. If I go back to the edit page, copy this over, because I'm scared and don't want to delete it. But if I get rid of that cross dissolve, now video transitions, we have that extra RC folder, and we have that RC slide, slap it on. We have that slide transition, the one. Oh, yeah, okay, cool. Normally, controls you publish will end up on this controls, but because we specifically told it to keep it on the settings page, that's why we have this little desaturate option over here. So if you don't change that, that will do it on this main controls folder. Either way, we have that little option, which you can see on the edge of the screen. If you want it to desaturate, do it, and we'll slide in as we go. Following along might have been a lot, but if you did, you've just made a transition. And if you didn't follow along, you can rewatch and learn how to make a transition. Very exciting, right? That's cool. You just made a transition. You can, again, bare bones. You can go as above and beyond as you want. Let's keep going with a title. Like Alex showed off with some title stuff, it is very easy to get started with a lot of titles, and we are going to keep things very bare bones. There's really one thing I want to show off about a title. I'm going to grab the default Text Plus effect, open that up in the Fusion page here with that same little option. And you can actually see as well that this text plus effect is called template. That's actually pretty important because you'll notice in the inspector, either in Fusion or the edit page, you have all these extra controls for customization, super powerful. So what we are going to do, we're just going to do like a simple slide up from the bottom text effect. So on that center parameter, I'm going to modify with the vector result again, change this origin down to the side, and if I slide up this angle, ooh, which way do you think it will go? You think it's 90 or negative 90? If I slide this up, it goes up. Yeah, so that works. So now I want to delete this because I don't want to do that. What I do want to do, because we're showing off sort of like baking in keyframes while keeping them dynamic. If you ever open up any of the default titles on the edit page that are Fusion titles, you might have known that even the more complex ones are built around the keyframe stretcher. That's the one tool we want to show off here. Anim curves is really great for continuous motion through your shot. When we get to an effect, we're going to stack that with keyframe stretcher to do some wild stuff. But for now, keyframe stretcher is really good when you have sort of introductory motion and you just want to wait and hold on it until the very end of your clip when you want to animate out. So that's what we're going to do. And we're going to do that by like baking in these keyframes, not keeping them too flexible. But at the beginning of my clip, I can just set a keyframe with this off screen, come forward like 10 frames or something. Actually rename this to something like me. Never mind. We just want that in layout. So we have it animating in, and then at like 40 to 50 frames, I will animate that back out. I'll hop open the spline editor, come to that displacement, just like we did in anim curves. The spline editor, also super cool. And if I want to ease all of these very quickly, click, press F, it flattens those. You can also click S if you have like multiple keyframes, and that'll do something like the same thing, but slightly different. So we have some really subtle easing on there. But right now, it comes up, it holds, and it goes away after 50 frames. We want it to hold this entire time. What can we do? We can right-click on that parameter where we have like hard baked-in keyframes. Normally, like you can't mess with that too much. But what we can do is insert, not modify with, that's a whole other menu, insert keyframe stretcher. Now, keyframe stretcher can also live as an individual node. Its pros and cons, I can't explain the specific situation where you would want one over another. But if you have like an entire built-out tree, lots of stuff happening on different nodes, and you want that entire, I guess I am explaining it right now, and you want that entire thing to sort of like execute its motion, hold, and then execute all the other motion you have going on, you can just do a keyframe stretcher node, which will look at everything before it. But if you only want one specific parameter to be stretched, that's what you can do, this sort of insert behavior. So now over on modifiers, we have keyframe stretcher, and we can tell it. The source, in this case, is that entire animation we made from a source start of 0, source end, to 50, and then we want to stretch from 10 frames to 40 frames. It's a little harder to preview here, but remember how I just skimmed a few seconds ago, and at 50 it went away? Now, it comes in at 10, it holds, and then whenever the last 10 frames of your composition is, it will execute that final 10 frames. And this stays dynamic on the edit page. If I stretch this out even further, it'll hold even further. Sometimes you get in a little bit of trouble if like your source or like your stretch values are like too small. Sometimes if you stretch it back the other way, you run into issues. But if you like build with a duration of like around 5 seconds, most time you don't want to get too crazy. So keyframe stretcher, pretty neat. Wow, what a cool professional title. But hey, you made a title. Oh, we need to do the other bit, don't we? The cool thing, like Alex said, so this is template. It has the save stuff here. Instead of going through that entire macro process again, like can you imagine bringing up like this macro, create macro, It's like, oh, I want every control. Let me check every box here so that people can use it on the edit page. That would be the worst, and we don't need to do it. What we can do is just right-click Settings, Save As. That's looking at that one node, which will be called Templates. Desktop, me, this. I'm going to save that here and go through that same process of Edit Titles. Oh, click on it. Show folder. That'll bring us to this new thing, right? Titles. I'm going to make a new folder called $RC. And then if I navigate to, so we have that template.setting, and it's important that it's called template inside Fusion, but at this point you can rename this. So if I just do something like RC title, drag that into this RC folder. Sometimes let resolve, think a second. Titles, RC, boom, back to the edit page. Titles, RC. You got that. It's living right next to all your other effects in a custom folder. It animates on, and you have all these extra customization options that you can stack on. Of course, you can always overwrite that or save to a power bin if you want any more options. But you can go ham on, again, Text Plus, another whole hour presentation that I'm not going to do. But you can go, we didn't even talk about the main animation engine. It's called the follower modifier, but there is no time. But for now, hey, you got a slick little pop-up that stays dynamic, always animates out at the very end. And now we can talk about the cool stuff, kind of. It's all cool, right? It's all cool. We can move on to effects. Ooh, the one thing I didn't talk about, which is important because it will trip people up. So remember how on that transition, we had to leave it with two open inputs, the background and the foreground for what will be the two sources of our transition. And then on that title, it was just the one node, but it was like standalone. We're going to see, hopefully when we get to generators, that'll be standalone as well. But this is all eventually stored as just like raw text data. Like if you open up that .setting file, it's just text. But which folder you drop it in, whether you drag it to be a title or an effect, Resolve will treat that file in different ways. So effects need at least one open input, and then it will take whatever footage you drop it on, plug it into that input. Like titles and that contours effect we showed off earlier, those live on their own right here. Like effects, like you need to drag to a video and then it gets applied. Titles and generators live on their own, which makes them really convenient to retime. And transitions, have to be dropped as a transition. But sometimes, you can go back and forth. If you created a generator but dropped it in the effects folder, it would let you drop that right on a clip. But because that generator you created would not have an open input, it would functionally overwrite that entire video source with whatever that generator was. So make sure you save things to the specific area, because that is how Resolve knows what to do with the thing you've made. Important information that I almost forgot. Ooh. Let's talk about effects, because we're going to do something simple. Our effect and generator are actually going to be pretty similar, but in some cool ways. So I've just got Alex, and I'm going to open up in the Fusion page. So let's make a super popular effect, just a basic like focused zoom effect. I'll zoom into your sign, so I'm not zooming into your face. So this is where we're finally, I guess, going to touch on a few entirely in Fusion fun stuff. That doesn't, no. Okay, let's talk. We're going to do a zoom, so we need a transform effect, because if you pull up this size, hey, it zooms the entire thing. But this transform has this little blue input, and that is for mask data. I can select this ellipse mask, and now I can preview that ellipse in my first viewer here. And now if I pull up that same size value, it only executes that move inside where it's masked. That's cool and funny. So we're going to make this little zoom effect. We're actually not going to animate this size, because we can animate the mask that is revealing the zoom. So to do that, on my ellipse, this width, I'm going to copy that 0.5 now because we are going to add anim curves to this width. Anim curves on width. By default, this scale is going up to 2, which is a whole lot. If I set that scale to 0.5, then over the course of this transition, it will scale up to that 0.5 amount, which again, we don't want because remember that's over the entire course of our clip. So actually, I'm going to copy these. This is a very long clip, you can tell, and it has a clear in and out. Sometimes that can trip you up doing Fusion stuff. So I'm going to copy this little node tree we've made. Actually go back to the edit page and make this a compound clip, because then if I go into Fusion, it will only show me the specific bounds of that compound clip. It's just a little easier to think in those confines. Okay, but now I can paste back that little node tree. We got a transform. We have that ellipse going from a value of 0 to 0.5. We don't want it to execute that move over the entire duration of our clip, so now we can change the source to custom. And believe it or not, we're actually going to do the same sort of keyframes we just did on that title, right? Normally, this source goes from a value of 0 to 1 over the entire length of your duration. We want it to go from a value of 0 to 1 in the intro, and then at the outro, go from 1 back to 0. So, frame 0, keyframe of 0. Frame 10, keyframe of 1. Frame 40, keyframe of 1. Frame 50, keyframe of 0. So you'll see it goes up and then goes down. That might be a little hard to see that little box. But now, like we said, modifiers on modifiers, insert stuff on modifiers. We can right-click on that, insert keyframe stretcher like we did before. Okay, let's do it. Those values be the same, 0 to 50, 10 to 40, and now, however long you stretch this to be, it will hold until those last 10 frames. Now, you might notice this is like all stretched out, not looking good. Now that we've done all this work, we can go back to Tools, and on this height, right-click, connect to anim curves value. So we did all this work on this width, and now that it's done, it's just sitting there in the Modifiers tab, and we can tell any other controls, hey, like, look at that thing we just did. Isn't it cool? Pay attention to that. And now this circle actually scales down, up, holds as long as we want, and back down. And if you actually preview the transform and pull up the size a bit, then it's down, scales up, holds as long as we want. But hey, isn't that kind of hard to see? Like the fine line, like it's like footage on footage. It's a little weird. What can we do? Well, I can take this ellipse mask. I'm going to Control-C, and I'm going to Control-Shift-V, and we get this other node that has this funky green line in between it. This is an instanced node. This is sort of like a selective copy. So by default, on this instance, even though it's not connected, if I change something like the center, it will change the center of both the instance and the original. But if I right-click on center and go to, if I'm on the instance and right-click on center, you can also see these green outlines that mean it is connected. If I de-instance, then only the one on the right is moving. So this is super helpful. You can use it all over the place. If you want two areas to act similarly with slight differences, then you can use an instance node with your main like animation, but sort of de-instance one parameter on the instance, be like, yes, do this same wiggle, but like wiggle it over here sort of deal. That sort of thing. I want actually that center back on it. The things I'm going to de-instance here are this solid checkbox I am de-instancing, and the border width I am de-instancing. So now, if I de-instance and then uncheck that off, it's completely gone, but we can pull up border width. Now we have this outline. Now, if I create a background node that is solid white, use the instance mask we have connected to that, merge that background after the transform. Now we have a nice little outline, and it is still pulling from that same anim curve. So last cool thing is on transform, if I were to publish and control the center of this, you might notice when we get to the edge, it's still scaling from center. So like his hand is down there, But if I go to the corner, I don't see his hand anymore because it has scaled it up past the bounds of the frame. But if I publish this center, which is kind of like, hey, make it a modifier so other tools can look at it, even though we're not doing anything to it right now, then back in Transform, we have this pivot control. And I can right-click there and go to Connect to Ellipse Center, and then, hey, his finger's back. And now wherever we move this, it is zooming to the exact center of where we position it. We're actually like moving the image as we move the mask. We're doing wild stuff. Now, the one thing, and then you could publish this and pull out in that big drop down, you would see like this ellipse center, you would check that box. You could publish like the outline thickness and even the zoom amount. You could go through that process. I want to show off one specific thing because I'm running out of time. This, if I package this up right now, that would live as an effect, right? It has an open input. You need to drag it directly on a clip. But what if we wanted this to be a generator? So this is living on this clip, and I'm going to drag this drone clip over to show off this very cool thing and hop back in. So this would work as an effect, but it would be a little finicky to mess with the timing of it, because by default it would execute that move on the entire clip, and oftentimes you just want to pull out a little clip to zoom in and then zoom back out. So you need to cut your source clips. But if this lived as a generator, taking up its own space on a timeline, it's very easy to retime. And we have a real nifty tool that was recently added. If I create a new media in one, by default, it will show the same footage because we are working on this Fusion comp inside a clip, right? But I think 17.2 something, I don't know. They added a very cool option in media source. A media in is also what would be created if you just drag a clip from the media pool to Fusion. It's just like the container for hey, it's footage, we're doing stuff. But if I change this media source to background, remember the thing I just did really quick, I went back to the edit page, dragged that drone shot to a clip beneath this footage. But if I click background, hey, we got that drone shot inside Fusion. This is sort of like an in-Fusion adjustment clip. So if I instead took this media in 2, connected it to this effect, bundled up the entire thing as a macro, which is the exact same process. I would go through, this template, save as, save that instead as a generator, because remember how it treats it as how it treats it. If you actually saved it at this point as an effect, it would do what we said earlier, where it would overwrite that effect, and you would only see what was beneath the clip you dropped it on. You don't want that. But since it's a generator, it's completely self-contained. It will live on its own, and then wherever we drag this clip, this is functionally what it's done. It's overwritten, and if we wanted to zoom in at a different point in time, it might do that, maybe after we built it up. But, so I kind of cheated. This is an effect, last minute switch to a generator with a nifty zoom effect that you would then publish those same controls, which if anyone has a quick question, we can always go over that again. But we did a lot, right? We made transition, we made a title, and then kind of an effect in a generator, and then your opacity node. As unbelievable as it might seem, this is half of step 1 of macros, like we said. It's very exciting, and each of these different categories, you could just go ham forever just on transitions and do really cool transitions, or just on titles. But it's all there. I think it's pretty cool. So good news, if you never want to touch Fusion, people are doing this for you. You just got to find them. But 2, if you're interested in Fusion, do that, but then do something with it. Put stuff together, share it. You'll be so much more motivated. It'll be really cool. The community is only growing in this kind of stuff. It's pretty cool. Thank you.
Well done. Great job, Patrick. Thank you so much. Man, my head hurts and is grateful at the same time. It's weird. How do you do that? Anyway, we have some time for questions. Here we go.
Got a really important one for you, Patrick.
Uh-oh.
Since you're spending all this time making presets, how do you back them up? Does Fusion have a way to do that by default, or do you have to know where the folder is and just copy them somewhere else?
Yes. I mean, like when we installed them, the other big thing I didn't touch on was DRFX, which is a whole other presentation, which makes it very easy to package these, save them, back them up, especially before installation. I could make dozens of titles in transitions, save them as a DRFX, send it to you. You double click once, they're all installed in the right place. It's very cool. But if you go through this general process, like right before I drag them back into these little show folder things, you can always navigate back to them. Like Magic Anime in the, wait, let me do this. Like the transition we made, you can always go back to show folder and just see where that .setting file is. And that's just a file you can back up, you can save.
Questions? Okay. Get you first, and I'll come back and get you after he's done, okay? Thanks.
Patrick, something a little bit more complex is in a transition. If you wanted to use call it an image, maybe you want a logo to transition across a piece of media to the next media and have it cover the screen until the next piece of media come in. I found that to be almost impossible to figure out how to do and have the media sort of slide or fade off or whatever you have to do to get it to cover the screen and transition it.
Yes. The harder part of that is if you were making that transition for a client or you wanted to share that. If you were making it just for use on your system, you could, if you just had the image in your media pool and drag that in, that would break, right? Because it's referencing a relative location in your media pool. But in Fusion, you also have a loader, which by default will look for something. So you can pull in any specific file, but even afterwards, it has a file path. So if you have that image you want to use, bring it in using a loader. This file path will look for its specific location on your hard drive, and as long as it stays in that location, it will work. If you want to create something to share or to sell that you want to use extra images inside of it, that's actually, that will require the extra DRFX stuff I talked about. DRFX, it can contain those presets, but it can also contain external referenced media. And in this file name, you just reference its relative position to where that .setting file is stored. And so you'll just do setting, and your syntax has to be pretty careful. But if you sort of have to make your transition, have that setting file saved, and then have your image next to it or in a folder before or after it, and come back into this file name and point to the specific point. I have one major video about DRFX that talks about that a little bit because it is complex.
Just a simple question. On transforms, you have Transform, Transform XF, and Transform 3D. Can you just simply explain the differences?
Transform 3D will be when you are working inside the 3D system. So if you have your Text Plus effect, you won't even be able to connect it to Transform 3D because you have to be in like your merge 3D and before your render 3D. The plane transform is like the OpenFX transform. Does anyone know if that's correct? The transform XF is generally what you want most of the time. Maybe. That's what I would use most of the time. I don't know if there are major pros and cons, but it'll move stuff.
I just have a slight follow-up on that question about using loader nodes to bring stills in. As far as I can tell, you can't use a loader for video files. It's just for stills. Is that correct?
Yes.
So if you're trying to package something up, like I've been trying to work with some client stuff that was built in After Effects and rebuild it in Fusion, and one of them involves a video file of an animated logo that they've got plopped on top of something. Is there any way of being able to package something up?
Image sequence.
I'd have to do it as an image. So a loader will do an image sequence, but won't do a video file?
I believe so. I'm pretty confident, but yes. The other option is sort of where I showed this background option in Loader. Around the same time, there were some extra options to like drag and drop media to be part of a preset from like on the edit page. They added kind of drop zone functionality. That still has some quirks. And then the other option, which is also like less intuitive, is that if you have just the logo you want to use, you can build your like lower third or whatever as an effect and drag it on that logo. But again, if you're sending this to someone else to use, that's not as intuitive as it should be. If you just like image sequence, probably your best bet.
Getting my workout today.
Helping you out. So you're welcome. You look great. You look. So when you're using the vector modifier, is that just creating a vector on the image that's where it's currently at, or what's actually happening when the vector modifier is created?
I believe if I do my little green circle, if I have a transform, it is, I believe, creating just like an extra layer of calculation to arrive at this point data. So if I modify with vector result, the origin will functionally serve as position. But just like, okay, from the origin, push it a certain amount, and which way do we push it? Dependent on the angle.
Very specific question. I noticed you dragged 2 media ones onto the node page, correct?
I don't. If you add extra media ins, it should number them for you.
Yeah, but can you bring the same media in twice?
If you are, I kind of did that. If you are starting from an image, or if an image or video clip, and you open that in the Fusion page, then any extra media in you add will automatically be that image.
Okay, so I can bring the media in twice. Can
Yes.
I put a time offset between the two?
Yeah. Or, I mean, at that point, if it's brought in once, you can just use nodes and branch one direction, branch another direction. You're using the same source to do.
Can I put a time offset
Yes.
between the media in?
Yeah. You could time offset before it gets back to itself. Yeah, you can get.
I mean, so like I'm bringing the current frame and 3 frames earlier.
Yes.
How?
So you got that background, time speed. Delay would be 3, not -3, right? That always messes me up. So now we got that, 3 frames before that, merge over itself, and then you could toggle that blend, but now it's da, 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 da. Technical terms. Yeah, time speed is the main delay by a certain amount of frames node.
Okay, we got a question here from our chat. It says, how can I create a Fusion preset that takes advantage of GPU acceleration for faster processing? Like some stuff show the option, but others don't.
I believe like that is, dependent on the individual nodes. I don't believe there's ever a situation where packaging up an effect would give you access to more power. But if you're like building it in Fusion or using a preset, by default, it should do what's best.
So going back to the packaging, you can choose to save as groups so that you retain all the individual steps, right? But if you choose not to save as, it compiles them into one item, but it still retains all the functionality that you built into it. You just prevent the user from opening and deconstructing your steps.
Yes.
So that's how you would ultimately potentially want to package it for an end user. If you wanted to retain any sort of special stuff that you came up with.
Yes. If we go to any of these .setting files, you can open them up in Notepad, and see it will show you the names of all the nodes. Is Notepad over there? That's funny. And you can see the nodes and stuff. It's hard to completely hide away stuff, but especially for end users who just want simplicity and not to get like blown away. That's like, yeah, yes, group or not saving as group is what most people will do for end user.
What language is that?
It's Lua. It's Fusion's secret language.
Awesome. Thank you all for the great questions. Give it up for Patrick, you guys. All right. We're going to be going into our second break. It's just going to be a 10-minute break this time. So go use the restroom, get a drink, and a friendly reminder, if you need to use the restroom or exit during a presentation, please use that back entrance right over there. Thank you. We'll see you soon.
So we use Fusion systems for all our computers here. And for us to be able to experiment, we need these powerful computers to be able to pull that off. When we think about future projects, we don't think about them from a hardware capability. Like virtual production running into Unreal Engine with real-time rendering, it's all just happening right there. And at this point now we're getting into artificial intelligence, deepfakes, image generation, audio processing. There's a whole bunch of crazy bits of technology, and it's working now because we work with Fusion computers.
All right, everyone. Head back to your seat, please. We need to give away some more stuff. So again, just a friendly reminder, if you are here present, you're already registered, you're entered. You have to do nothing except enjoy what you win if you win. People online, be sure to register the giveaway. There's information in the chat on how to do that. You only have to register one time, and we encourage you to stick around just so we can be excited with you when you win. So, Palco Mattia, are you here? Palco? You won a speed editor. Justin Schrant won a Schrant. Names are hard for some people. You want a copy of Beat Edit, congratulations. And Kevin Hernandez Martinez, you want a copy of Nobe Omniscope. Grant Benish, you want a copy of Omniscope. And Galen Mahon? Okay, McMahon. You've won a Resolve Micro panel. Congratulations. And last but not least, Taylor Bagley. Are you here? That's you? This is really special because I get to give you a NVIDIA 3070 graphics card. Congratulations to all of I know. We are giving a GPU away every day of Resolvecon. Again, special thanks to NVIDIA Studio, freaking awesome. And thank you to all the sponsors that made that giveaway happen. Thank you, Blackmagic, Mammo World, Nobe Omniscope, and NVIDIA Studio. The generosity of these companies is humbling, to say the least. So thank you, everyone, for making that happen. Okay, guys, let's get into our next panel and give it up for our panelist, Darren Mostyn.
Good morning. Apologize now if anyone saw my live stream in the week. just be assured I've got a team of about 7 professionals here, so it shouldn't be the car crash that was in the week. And I just want to pass on my best wishes to Cullen. Obviously, he can't make it, so we were going to do a session together, arguing out our node trees. So that node tree war won't happen now, but we'll get that sorted some other time, I'm sure. But I'm wishing him and his family all the best. So I want to talk to you next 45 minutes about the tools that I use as a colorist to help me stay focused and on track, particularly the scopes. You'll be pleased to know I am actually a working colorist, so I've been a colorist for about 17 years and worked in the broadcast industry for probably scarily nearly 30 years now. But so I'm going to show you how I use the tools to keep my images looking the best they can. I'm going to do a tiny little beginner's intro to the scopes, just in case people don't know, but we are going to get into something a little bit more meaty, so just be patient if you do know the scopes. But I'm just going to give a little quick overview on that. All right, so let's start off with this. Now, I'm using a Windows system here. I'm used to Mac, so bear with me. But yeah, so this is a little slide I've prepared, the roles of a colorist. This is, in my opinion, okay, this is very debatable, I'm sure, but I just wanted to run through some of the main roles as a colorist, what I'm responsible for, okay? And I think number one, color management and correction, all right? So understanding color management is really important these days to get your images consistently looking good, getting the best. If you don't understand color management, you haven't gone there yet, it really is the time to start taking it a bit more seriously. Okay, it's really going to enhance your things. I'm going to show you examples of this throughout. And I put there and correction. So obviously, I deal with a lot of nice footage. I'm very lucky with a lot of the footage I get, but I deal with a lot of not so nice footage. Okay, so we've got a correction part, getting it neutral, getting it clean, getting it good to start with, is going to help me with all the rest of the points on here. Sorry, I'm a bit quiet.
A little quiet now.
Thanks. I've just got this huge screen next to me, so I'm sure half of you can't see me. Hello. Daria. Right. Where's it? Yes, so then with the look creation and realizing the client's and director's vision. So not only we've got to balance the shots and get them good to start with, but the look creation is going to come from getting that color management correct to start with. Okay, if your images are looking the best they can from the get-go, you've got a better chance of making your look development better. So the look creation is a very important part. That's, it's one of the harder parts of it. It comes with practice and time. So point number 3 here, understanding contrast and saturation. So we're working in a 2D medium, all right? And the best way to give that depth is really understanding how your contrast tools work and how your saturation tools work and how they work together, okay, to give us color separation and better contrast, because we're working in 2D. All right, so we want to give that as much depth as we can. So you need to understand those tools. Again, I'm going to show you this throughout my presentation. I think another important one is shot enhancement to help focus the viewer. What I mean by that is using very clever use of power windows and things like that, just to shape the image, reshape the light, make sure the viewer is drawn towards what you want them to focus to without them realizing it. Okay, no one likes a great big heavy shape around something to. Yeah, here it is, great big arrow infusion. So it's understanding that that shot enhancement. Okay. Number 5 and number 6 are the points that I want to really deal with more focused today. Okay. So scene matching. This is arguably the hardest part of color grading, being a colorist. Okay. Anyone can grade a single shot and make it look fantastic. That is pretty much, that's pretty easy to do. You've got to make shots 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 look that good as well, and that's a finer art. And using tools like the scopes to help you do that, I'm going to show you little techniques and little tricks that I do just to help me do that. Okay, I just want to point out from the word go, and I'll mention this a few times, but the scopes are not going to make you a better colorist. Okay, what they're going to do is help you with point number 6 here, which is ensuring your image is kept at the best quality and to the correct technical specification. All right, it's science. Okay, the scopes are just a scientific measurement tool. Okay, they're not going to make me a better colorist, but they're going to help reassure me and help me understand what I'm doing to my image and just checking that I'm not pushing it too far. All right. So point 6 Ensuring my image is kept at its best quality is going to help with all the other points on there. So by doing things like good color management, by my shot enhancement, the look creation, by keeping the image at its best quality to start with, I've got a better chance of all these 6 points just blending together and hopefully making fantastic images for your client, all right, or for broadcast or whatever you're doing. All right, I think there's another couple of roles in there. I think being a mind reader is pretty helpful. If you, therapist, you know, a moderate barista can help. But I think these are the main roles of being a colorist. All right. Okay. Let me get that. All right, so I'm just going to give you a very quick beginner's guide to the scopes. Okay, so again, just forgive me if you're very proficient in the scopes. I'm just going to do this very quickly here. But let's just start off with a grayscale. I've got a few shots in here that we're going to work through. I'm going to start balancing shots up for you and using my traditional techniques. Okay, so we've got this grayscale down here. The scopes are down here in the bottom corner. They can pop out on a little icon like that, and we can run them in 1 view, 2 view, 4 views, and even 9 views. Now, a common support issue is I can't make the 9 view work. It's because the box is too small. You need to just literally expand this out. I can do that. And the bigger you make it, eventually it will go into 9 screens. Okay, but we'll look at that a little bit later. So what is this grayscale doing? It's going from black on the left here to white on the right, and our waveform here is measuring luminance. It's measuring the brightness of that grayscale, all right? So 0 being black, 1023 being my highest white point in a 10-bit image. So 0 to 1023 is a 10-bit scale. You can work in 8-bit scale, 12-bit scale, you can work in percentages. All those items are available in here. So we can change the range that we're looking at, but for me, I like to work in a 10-bit range. I want to see what's going on, and you'll see why in a moment. So that is our luminance image. So the vector scope is measuring saturation, hue, is the amount of color that's in our image. And that is just showing a tiny little dot right in the middle because there is no saturation at the minute. I haven't put anything in here at all. And just to do a really quick sort of crude example, if I go to my offset tool and just add some blue in there, you'll see that the vector scope is now leaning towards the blue box there. All right, so that's now got some saturation in it. All right, let me reset that. So just moving on a little bit from there, talk about the other scopes. We've got the main 4 in Resolve are the waveform, measuring luminance. Parade is measuring red, green, and blue luminance. Okay, so I can see in the individual channels what's going on. The vector scope is measuring my saturation, and the histogram is measuring, it's the distribution of pixels within the image. So it's from black to white here. Okay, so we've got a lot of black going on in here because of our bars. We've got a lot of white going on because of our bars here. And the color range in the middle is all sitting at 768 in our 10-bit scale. Okay, so why is that? These are 75% bars. That means each color channel that's coming out of here is at 75% amplitude. All right, so let me just show you that. So they look like they're all different brightnesses and things. This, again, is your eyes tricking you. Again, why scopes can help us. But if I right-hand click in here, you can say Show Picker RGB Value. And if I click this on here, you'll see that it's 191,191, 00,191,191. It's always 191, which is exactly 75% of 255, which is our 0 to 255 scale. All right. So all these are measuring at 75% amplitude, which is why our histogram is showing that all the pixels, except at 0 and 1023, are at 75%. Let me just show you an image and show you how that actually correlates. So if I just bring up this classic ARRI chart that you can download from the ARRI site, but you can now see what the histogram is doing. It's showing from black to white the distribution of pixels. So we've got slightly more distribution of pixels in the lower end. Up here, there's not much going on. It means we've got a little bit of headroom to push this up should we want to. All right. But what I don't want to see is lines like this big crashing over the 1023 mark. Okay, that means we're clipping. All right, so we need to not be clipping anything. Our waveform is showing us a good image here. So we've got our blacks are not sitting below black, which is what we want. This is obviously a very well exposed image. This is from their chart. I've got Resolve color management on here at the moment, which we're going to dip in and out of. But just to show you what I've got going on here, I've just got the regular Davinci RGB color management set at its default automatic setting for Rec 709. All right, so we're just presuming a Rec 709 deliverable here. And I'll come on to that we shouldn't presume that. That was actually in the first slide about the technical specs. So if I just go back to that. Number 6, ensuring best quality into the correct technical specification. Before you start grading, you need to know what you're outputting. Don't start grading until you know even where it's going. So from your broadcaster or from your client, you want a delivery tech spec saying this is for broadcast, it's Rec 709. If it doesn't say it's Rec 709, presume it's Rec 709 Gamma 2.4, which is regular HD television, unless they tell you otherwise. Okay? A lot of the tech specs I get from BBC, Sky, ITV, they don't mention the color gamut at all. So it's Rec 709 Gamma 2.4 unless they tell me otherwise. All right? What they will put on the specification is we want it delivered Ultra HD, or we want it 1920 by 1080, we want it ProRes 4444, that kind of thing. All right? Okay, so we're working in Rec 709 Gamma 2.4. Let's go back to this image. So our vector scope is looking good here. Okay, these boxes around the outside are sat at 75%. All right, so let me go back to that color bar we've got here. The 75% saturation amplitude means that it will sat exactly inside these boxes. This is red, magenta, blue, cyan, green, and yellow. Okay, these pots sit exactly in it. So let's have a look at our ARRI image again. We've got color management on there, so we're not log, it's not flat. We've brought it into life, as it were. And we can see around the outside here that our scope is showing that all the color values in there are sitting very safely within 75%. The 75% boxes on the outside of the vector scope are not the legal limit you can go to. You can go beyond there. All right? What it's an indication to me, if you look at the bars again, if I've got saturation sitting anywhere like that in my image, you need your sunglasses on. This is a pretty, that's heavy saturation. It's certainly for how I work, okay? So it's a guide that you're getting close to either looking ridiculous or you are going to go over. If you do go over, you can get to a point where your program could be rejected. So all the programs I deliver go through a QC process. They can be rejected for whites being clipped, shadows being crushed, and saturation being too high. Okay, so these are why I'm using my scopes. I'm not using my scopes to help me grade it and make it look better. I'm using it to keep legal in this instance. All right, so we can see quite clearly this is all sitting safely. All right, the reason I'm pointing that out is because if I go... Oh, sorry, just before I do that, I just want to show you another couple of little things in the scopes before we go on any further, because you can customize these a little bit more than we were just talking about. You can click on here, and you can adjust the brightness of the trace, okay? You can adjust, the gratical is the scale on there. You can do that for each and every one of these scopes. But up here, there's a couple of other things just to look at. One of them is this low-pass filter. If I press this on, it cleans up the feed going into the scope and just cleans up like noise and that sort of thing. And it just gives me a little bit more of a truer representation and easier for me to read quickly the scope trace that's going on. The other thing that's really important for me in my studio is my scopes are actually on a dedicated machine. All right? So I don't have this big window taking up my interface. If you've got a dual screen system, this would sit really nicely on that dual screen and can stay visible for the whole time. All right? So I would strongly suggest that you have your scopes on a separate screen, even if that's just a dual computer screen, and it's there all the time. You need them all the time. You need to glance. You don't want to be changing these settings, opening it up, closing it down, that sort of thing. I've even got mine running on a dedicated computer, so I take a feed from my Ultra Studio 4K Extreme, or whatever I/O device you have, and it's a proper video signal going into that computer to read the scopes. All right? And I'll show you my setup in a little while. All right, so that's the optimum solution. Okay, so ideally you want your scopes visible all times. All right. Don't forget what rules is your eyes and what you think of the image. All right, the scopes are just to glance at quickly and just check everything's staying good and technically correct. All right. Okay, so what I want to show you is one little menu that's in the color management setting. If we go to color management here, down at the bottom there's this thing called Broadcast Safe. So why don't I just switch on Broadcast Safe and grade however I want and let Resolve handle the limits. Okay, the idea of this is it's kind of a limiter, so it stops anything going over illegal levels. All right, let me show you why I don't use this. So we take this image here, the ARRI image, So I'm running out of real estate here. Let me just put on, let me just see if I can bring that down a little bit. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so the minute we've not got broadcast safe on, I'm going to put broadcast safe on. Okay, and I'm going to press save. And a little trick here, if you press option, you can press save and that box won't close down. So you can go through various menus, because it's a bit annoying when you press save, it always closes down, you've got to open it again. So if you press alt or option, it applies the new effect, but it stays open. So that broadcast save has actually done nothing. And the reason for that is the safe levels here, -20 and minus 100, and 120 is outside of our legal range anyway. Okay, 100% is the legal broadcast we want to look at. So I'm going to put it on to 0 to 100. I'm going to press save and watch what happens, particularly this area here in the background. Okay, the blue background wall. Just watch what happens when I press save. Okay, and it's changed the saturation level. Now we're not even illegal. We're not even close to being illegal. I'm nowhere near the 75% range. Okay, so in my opinion, and I'm very happy to be corrected by anyone here or anyone at the development team, but it's too aggressive for me. Okay, I can control my levels much smoother than that, and I'm going to show you how. All right, but that's one reason not to use the broadcast safe. So let's immediately get that off. Press save, and then our walls come back, and you can see here that there's the blues in there. They're nowhere near. They were looking good. All right. So what I'm going to do is just show you one way. What happens here? Sorry, if I just get rid of that box. If I go to my offset now, okay, and just move up in this image, when we hit the ceiling, what Resolve tries to do is just clamp that level, so it won't go beyond 100. So it's technically legal, but it doesn't look nice. All right, we've got this bad clipping going on her face here. You can see this is all clipping out. It's not pretty to look at. So technically I'm legal, but if I look at the top of my waveform, everything is starting to get crushed at the top. So let's immediately undo that. And in fact, if I do that with offset, which would be my way of getting sort of my exposure levels good, and then just choose gain, you see again, it just crashes out a little bit too quick. So it's not pretty. So what we can do is utilize our Resolve color management, going back to my point number 1 on my slide, and take off the automatic color management. Okay, we're still saying in Davinci RGB color managed. I'm going to come down here. I'm going to change this to be custom. And what I'm going to do, my input color space is set to Rec 709 scene. That's just a default input if I don't tell Resolve what my camera source is. All right, I've already told it what the camera source is, so I can leave that set to Rec 709 scene. My timeline color space is currently set to Rec 709. Let's change that to Davinci wide gamut. And what's going to happen now is the Davinci wide gamut has changed another couple of settings in here automatically. Okay, it's given us our input DRT as Davinci, it's given us a higher working luminance, and it's going to color manage and tone map my image in a much more creative and a better technical way. All right, so if I do that same move now, if I just press save, let's check I've got that right. Oh, output color space gamma 2.4, of course, because we haven't been told otherwise. Obviously, that should match your grading monitor. So if you're grading to gamma 2.4, your color monitor should be calibrated to gamma 2.4. Right, let's do that same move. So if I now take my offset up, watch what happens when it gets near the top. There's a roll-off. There's a gentle roll-off. That's happening automatically with color management. So already color management is helping me keep the image the best it can possibly be. It's sitting up way too high, obviously. I'm just showing you an example. So let's actually bring it down a little bit. And let's just do the same with our gain. And you see, again, as it gets to the top, it rolls off. It doesn't hit the ceiling. It doesn't clip so hard. Okay? It's still clipping. That's still not a pretty image, but it's better than it was a second ago. All right? So I'm using color management to my advantage. Same is true in the shadows as well. It does the same roll-off. Okay? So you don't crush your blacks. All right, let's actually start grading. So that's the kind of overview, a bit of color management, what the scopes are doing. How do we actually use this in reality? Okay, so what I'm going to do is, oh, sorry, just one other thing on the color management here. If we go to here, these shots are actually raw files, so they don't need any input putting in. Resolve, when you're in color management, knows that they're raw. It applies the correct input transfer in there already. These clips here are Canon, So I right-click on here. My input color space is set to Canon log 3. All right. These clips here that I'm going to use are Blackmagic Design Pocket 4K. As you all know, the color management on the Blackmagic side can be a bit of fun. It's just have an experiment, have a go. The DOP did actually know what they'd set this to, so it is 4K Film Gen 4. Thirst of, they're very ready now. All right, so let's go back to this shot. What I'm going to do is grade this shot up. It's already been color managed, so I'm in a great starting place. We look at our waveform, look at our scopes, everything's looking healthy. We're just going to enhance it. So the first thing I do on here, and this is where the scopes are going to help me, is I need to set my exposure. So I get asked a lot, where do you set that? What do you do? This is looking really good here. It's sat in a pretty comfortable position. I've got no highlights being blown out. The image looks good already. It's been shot well. For me, what we're looking at a person. Okay, so what I want to expose for is the skin. I want to make sure that their skin tone is looking good. So how do we know where that is? Well, there's no written rule as to where it is, but there's a guide that suggests this. You've got to work out whether it's indoors. Is it moody lighting? This is bright sunlight in Italy. Obviously, plenty of light. He's not in any shadow or anything like that. So I'm expecting this to be at the height of where I would want my skin tone to be sitting. And that would be somewhere around this area here. Okay? You're looking at skin tone being between sort of this range, 350 up to, I don't know, 640-ish as a guide. All right? So I'm using my scopes to get my first position. I'm going to click on here. I'm going to use my offset tool, one of many tools you can use for getting exposure. I'm just going to bring that down. So even though I'm bringing it down, how do I know where his face is? Okay, well, the scopes are read from left to right. So I've got here, and he is pretty much central. I'd say he's off by 10%. So this is him. Can you see that on the mouse? Is that clear enough? That's his face, but this is also his hair. So I want his actual skin bit to measure. So what we can do is go into here and choose this thing called Display Qualifier Focus. And this is a tool that allows my mouse, wherever I put it, to identify on the scopes the point it is. So when you're measuring skin tone, a good idea, again, there's no rules, there's no law with this, but this is sort of my take on it, is you don't want a shadow side or a highlight side, so you want something like tip of the nose, forehead, chin, items that aren't going to be blocked by anything, okay? So if we go to the tip of his nose here, we can see, now if you look on the waveform, if I just move it around a bit so you can see it, there's a little circle, and that is showing me where on the waveform that pixel is. And it's an exact pixel, so you just take this as a guide, okay? But it's sitting roughly where I want it, I think. That's pretty good. So we've only had to move it down a few points on the offset. So that's my first one. So I'll tell you what I'll do. Let's label that. I'll just call it offset. Okay, next node. Alt-S. I normally work with a fixed node tree. I normally work with CSTs, so this is not my exact workflow, but the changes that I'm making in the grade are the same as my fixed node tree. So the next thing for me is balance. Okay, so on this, what needs balancing? Do we balance his shirt? Do we balance the sky? We balance his skin, okay? Because that's the main thing that's going on here. So how do we measure his skin? Well, what we're going to do is put on here, on our vector scope, the skin line. All right, so we can click up here and come down to here, and it says Show Skin Tone Indicator. And that is a line that you've probably heard about the skin tone indicator a lot. It's a guide, okay? It's not, you don't have to be sat on it. It obviously depends. If I've got strong blue light coming in, so very cold shot, dark, it might not sit on this line, but in an ideal scenario, it would, all right? So he's actually, where that skin tone indicator is there, I thought what I'm gonna do, I'm just gonna bring up the graticule a little bit so you can see it clearer. And that scope. All right, so he's sitting pretty good on that line. We could make a little adjustment here now, so I'm gonna go to my offset. I'm working with a mouse. I normally work with pen and tablet for a start, but also a control surface here is really where they come into their own. I want to move this so small amount. Small movements for me are everything. So watch how little I need to move this offset to actually make that start moving. So I'm just bringing it down to sit bang on that line. And this is what have I moved? 0.27. Okay, that's a big move for me. In fact, if I just enable and disable that clip, that node, look how much those scopes move. Okay, and you can even see his skin tone looking better. Okay, well, I don't know how well that's coming across on the feed, but it's looking better on here. So that's on my beautiful calibrated monitor that I've got. You know, yeah. I'm going to make it as good as I can on here, all right? So that would be my balance. Now, just to show you something, if I go, just that on that skin tone line, if I go back to these guys here, I just want to show you a little trick. If you wanted to isolate skin to actually check that on a vector scope and only the skin, there's a lot going on in this scene. I can't really tell what should be sitting on that vector scope line. If I just draw a temporary window and just put it on her face, and then press the highlight tool here, what that does is just isolate the face. So I can now see what's happening on that vector scope. And you see it sitting bang on the line. Okay? I just want to show you that it doesn't actually matter what skin color you've got, it still should sit on that line. Well, that was a Freudian slip. There we go. So you see the guy sitting on that, bang on the line, and the girl sitting bang on the line. Okay? So that skin line is good. All right, let's take that off. Let's go back to our shot here. So we've got that done. Let's just go to the next shot now. The next node, sorry. And what I want to work on next would be contrast. Okay, so we've done our exposure, we've done our balance. The next thing I want is contrast. Let me just label that one. That was our, what I call printer lights. The next one's going to be our contrast. Now, what you need to bear in mind with contrast is, remember in my original slide I was talking about contrast and saturation, helping sculpt our 2D image into giving it a bit more virtual depth. When I add contrast in here, let me just label this one, and there's many different ways of adding contrast. I'm just going to go for a simple lift and gain control, but watch also what's happening on the vector scope. So I'm just going to put I'm just going to bring my lift down, and I'm going to bring my gain up. And as I do that, all I'm adjusting is lift and gain, but it's increasing my saturation. So the more you add contrast, the more, not perceived saturation is, it really is increasing saturation. So the temptation is saturation, you know, what a lot of people do is they'll color manage it, whack the saturation up, then stick some contrast on. The other way around is more suited to my workflow. All right, I want to see what the contrast is going to do to that saturation before I go any further. So I'm going to add another node. And I am going to call this saturation. And if you look at the scope, we've got a healthy amount of saturation in there. Okay? So the scope is telling me, you know, you're good. But my eyes don't know what a bit more saturation is going to be like yet. So I'm just going to add a bit more anyway. Let's go to HDR, add some saturation. And I'm just playing around with it now. What I'm doing, yeah, keep a little eye on the scope just to check I'm not being illegal. But I've got plenty of scope, plenty of range there. As I look at the trace on the vector scope. So I don't think it actually needs any. I'll put a little bit in just because I can. So the image should now be looking pretty much as good as you can get it. The next thing is obviously adding texture and things like that, putting the shapes around it. But I'm going to leave that as it is there for now. So just have a quick look. That was before with color management, and that's our grade. All right. So the next thing, one of my points on my original slide, balancing the scene. We've got to make the whole scene work, not just this one shot. So let's take our little mini scene that I've got going on here. I'm going to right-click on here and apply grade. In fact, I can middle mouse click and apply that grade. Oops, sorry. There's middle mouse click this guy, and that's copied the grade across. All right, so let's run that through. This is a video by a band called Delta Sleep, by the way, who are an amazing band, if you want to look up Delta Sleep. So it looks good, yeah? We're all happy, that's all balanced across. However, if I look at my scopes and just check that, this shot, they're looking good. I'm looking at my waveform. My parade is showing me the individual red and green and blue channels. In fact, on the parade, you can even show the Y channel at the same time if you want to. So that is basically a squashed down version of this. So the parade, by the way, just for those who don't know, it's the full left to right of the shot, but just squashed into thirds, so you can display the 3 channels. Okay. If I just put, no, I won't do it. So let's go back, put that onto RGB. So these two are looking good, but if you look at the waveform round about here, when I go back to our original graded shot, it's actually sitting quite a bit lower. So actually, it's not actually balanced. The whole scene feels a little bit brighter when we get to the next apart. Okay, so the two after it got lucky, they balanced well, but this one's slightly less. So what I want to do is, I need to make an adjustment on that. Now the scopes can't tell me which shots to move. Okay, I've got to make a colorist decision here what to do. Do I make the other two shots a bit darker? Do I make this guy a bit lighter? Do I do a balance between the two? Probably a balance between the two would be good. So let's just lift this guy a bit. I'm going to go back to my offset here. I'm just going to pull him up a little bit. I'm just making note on the scopes where it's sitting. So let's take this point here, and then I'm going to drop these ones down a little bit. And then I'm going to copy that one, number 7, to here. And they should now feel a little bit better, which they do. Always play it through. All right, so that's covered sort of how I use the scopes to get the balance initially, how I copy that across to balance the scenes, and how they become a useful guide, but don't swear by them. I'm making the ultimate decision at the end as to how this grade's going to look. Okay. Page 2. Don't worry, Casey, it's a bit quicker. I've got a little clock there, so I'm just keeping an eye on it. Right. Let me show you some other techniques. This shot's already been graded, you'll be pleased to know, using exactly the techniques that I just did. All right, so what we've got here is, this is a shot from a music video from a YouTube channel called Beard Meets Food, so just giving him a little shout out, because they let me use this footage. It's quite an interesting channel, that a guy just eats as much as he can, and he's got 25 billion subscribers or something. So I'm in the wrong game on YouTube, I think. Although I don't fancy taking him on, to be honest. I'm full after a Kit Kat. So so this shot's already graded. So what I'm going to do is show you another technique for balancing it up. So A, using our scopes, but B, with another couple of techniques. So what we're going to do is take this shot, I'm going to grab it as a still. Let's presume this is graded, everyone's happy. We're all sitting legal, none of my shadows are being crushed, the highlights are nice and safe. It's indoors, so I don't want this smashing through the ceiling. It's at a good level. Moving on to the next shot, I'm going to do straight away just a straight copy and paste. So I'm going to hit my middle mouse click, copy and paste that grade across, and let's have a look at the level. So I'm just looking at my waveform. That's looking pretty balanced, I'd say. The parade is kind of okay. Bear in mind we're on a slightly close up here, so there's not as much white in the scene as it is. Our vector scope's going a little bit funky, but again, we need to see what's going on. But my point here is we're not matching like for like. We're looking at a close-up here, and as we move through the shot, we move up to her face. And the face is the important bit here, not the zip on her jeans. Okay. If we look at this, you'll see that the image is very different. How do I know that? Let's take this still. This is a common technique. Let me just take off. This live preview is a little bit annoying for me. If I double-click the still that we took of the shot before it, we can see that there's a massive change in exposure on her face. In fact, in tonality, everything. All right. So what I want to do is try and line these up so I can see them both at the same time, and then I can line that up on my scopes. And it doesn't matter where I push this. If I bring a face in here, I can't see the other face. And if I go that way, I can't see the other face. So I've got a bit of an issue here. So there is a trick where you can swap them. Right, on a Mac. I don't know. Jesus. All right, let me try this. I'm like an idiot here now. Yeah. Alt-W, there you go. So on a PC, it's Alt-W. We all need that. What that's done is just flipped them around. All right, so now I can see both the faces. That you can go beyond that and actually get this a little bit better. So what I'm looking at now is a split. If you look at my waveform, for example, as I move between the two, it's literally showing me half of each side on my waveform. So this is a really good way of lining them up. But I'm not seeing true here. I'm seeing mostly a blue shirt. So what we can do, there's a little trick. If you come down to sizing here, you can go along here to reference sizing. And what this can do is change the size of my reference clip, the wipe. So what I can do is zoom in, and I can tilt that down, and I can pan it over. And now what I've got, so my scopes are adjusting automatically at the same time, and I've got a much more like-for-like view to balance this up. All right. So it's a little bit of messing about, but you can get there. So what I can do now is go to my exposure, go to my offset here, make sure I'm on shot 10, and start adjusting that. Okay, so that's a kind of good way, but there's a better way. All right, so what I want to do is get rid of that. I'm going to come out of that, and I go to the next one along here, which is called, I can never remember what it's called, split screen. And I'm going to bring on my split screen. And what I'm going to do now is here, once you go into split screen mode, I've got left 10 minutes, When you go to split screen mode, you can split screen between anything. All right. Classically, I use things like playheads. You can split screen stills. You can split screen clips. You can do neighbor clips even. So this will take 2 clips back, 1 clip forward, and put them into a view for you. But my scopes are picking this up as well. So let's take that to our advantage when we're trying to balance these shots. So I'm not going to do neighbor clips. I want this still here. So don't press selected still grades. All that does is take the grade from this shot and apply it to your next one. I want to actually select the still image. And now what we've got is full screen, side by side, view, and reflected in our scopes. So what I can do now is go to our exposure, and I'm looking at the whole image, so we get a much fairer representation of what we're trying to balance up here. So something like that. So for exposure, I'm probably a bit high. I'm quite happy round about there, all right? But we've still got this shift, so the balance is still not correct. So I want to show you a pretty cool trick here. If I go to balance here, if we look at our vector scope, in fact, let's bring it up. I'll bring it up full screen for you as a single. I'll get there in a minute. This is why I really like using external scopes. You've got them there all the time. You can play around. I've got one. I'll show you my scopes in a moment. But there's our vector scope, right? So if I do this trick, what I can do is go to my offset, okay? And if I just go extreme, that side's obviously slightly out of balance, and the other shot is the one we're going to. But I can actually get the trace to sit on top of the reference image, so you can get it absolutely accurate. And to enhance that even more, if I go to my vector scope here, we can say show 2x zoom. So I can actually zoom this in momentarily. In fact, if you press Alt, I'm not going to do it on Windows because I'm going to mess it up. If you press Alt and mouse, you can actually zoom right into that scope. Okay. So let's use that to our advantage. I'm going to take my offset. Again, I'm doing this with a mouse, not a control surface, but I can actually sit that. I'm not looking at the image at all. I'm dropping that straight on top, and I'd say that's pretty close for YouTube. So if I just temporarily take that one off, it's a huge difference. Okay. Actually, that's not quite right. I don't think it was that bad before. But so that's taking advantage of the scopes. Okay. Don't look at the scopes too much. Treat them as a guide. You shouldn't be looking at one image for too much, to be honest. You should be moving through this a lot quicker. But obviously, I'm explaining the process as we go along. All right. So that's pretty good. So what I want to show you in the time I've got left, which is I'm running to good time case, don't worry, is show you the scopes that I use. I don't actually use the Resolve scopes. Okay, there's nothing wrong with Resolve scopes. They are completely accurate. Okay, but I use a system called Nobe Omniscope. It's quite well documented on my channel, and I'm going to show you why. All right. So, and they're one of the sponsors of this, but I use it. I've been using it for years. That's all clearly documented on my channel. So it's I'm going to show you for real. So what I'll do is show you how I've got mine set up in the suite. So let me see if I can get this a bit better. Sorry, one sec. There you go. Right. Oh, I'm in split screen mode. Hang on a sec. I'll come off that. There we go. Right. So that's my suite. So you've got my panel. You see here, that's my GUI. I've only got one screen for the GUI, albeit it's quite a big one. My hero monitor in the middle, client monitor at the top, and on the left-hand side here, I've got my scopes. These are on a 34-inch wide curved Dell screen, which I get ribbed for all the time in the industry for having such massive scopes. This is how much I love Omniscope. I want them to be big. I love it. Normally I'm working in the dark, by the way, so this is obviously with the lights on. But they are a little bit big, to be honest. I think I could probably do the smaller monitor. I just don't know what to do with that monitor. A little bit close up. Oh, I have no idea how that got in there. Thank you very much. Sorry, there's the Omniscope. I was wondering where that went. So you can just see it a little bit clearer. But I'm going to show you how it works actually inside Resolve. So this is on a dedicated system, as I mentioned before. It's being fed from my Ultra Studio 4K into a dedicated workstation just to display Nobe Omniscope. But there is a trick that I can do to show it you on the screen here, okay? But it's not the ideal way of working, but it might help you in the field if you're on a laptop, that sort of thing. I've got to work out to get this off now. There we go. So let's go back to our original shot here. When I bring up, so I've already prepared this, you'll be pleased to know. probably no one's more pleased than Casey. I'm going to hit this timeline button here. And what I've done is set the omniscopes to sit at the timeline level. So that means it's working across all the shots that are in my color page. Okay. Now, there is a way to do it on the edit page in an adjustment layer. So if you use timeline for something else in your node structure, don't worry, you don't have to do it this way. There is another way around, okay? But I'm just doing it this way for ease. I'm going to switch on this node, and if I go to my effects, you'll see here I've got Node Omniscope installed, and it's just a Davinci Resolve OFX plugin. All right, so I've just dragged and dropped it from the effects folder onto that node. If I press Open Display, it opens up. I've just got to connect it to Davinci Resolve. That's where it all's going to go wrong. Hang on. Just bear with me. I'm not sure what's doing that. That's what I'll do. Let me just grab it as a new clip. So if I type in here, Omniscope, so just to show you where it is, I can drag and drop it onto that node, open it up. Come on. Okay, it should just connect. Is it zoomed in? No. So,
go to the left, down. You had it, so go back to the right.
do you want to show me?
Yeah, go to the right.
Yeah?
Center of your screen.
It's a bit awkward, isn't it?
There we go. Okay, go back to the. Okay, slowly go up. Up. Keep on going. Stop. Click. Hey. That's what the Davinci Resolve.
Has that done it?
I think it's the.
Say again?
I think it's the Windows offset.
Is it?
It's hard to see.
How do I do that then?
I'm not sure.
Oh, I'm really sorry about this. I've got no idea. I know how to use the omniscopes. I just had to show them. Casey, you got any idea? It just won't connect.
It won't connect to Resolve. The only thing I'm thinking is
it's there, but some sort of mouse offset or something. This all works in rehearsal, I promise. Another reason why I have it on an external machine. We're in there, set time. It's just not
going to work, huh?
Not feeling the signal, no.
Yeah.
All right, we're gonna just go to
I've only got 1 minute left.
questions real quick while we mess with that, or if you want to keep working on it. Totally
I'll
fine.
try one more thing. Let me see if I can get it going in the edit page. But I don't think it's connecting. My apologies for that. It's bloody brilliant when it works, by the way. Just put an adjust. So, I mean, the other way you would do it is you'd get an adjustment clip here, put it onto the edit page. So if you needed that timeline out mode, and then you can literally grab Omniscope from the toolbox. And just drag it on like so, and then open display, and hey presto, we're back to that car crash. Oh, there you go. I'll tell you what, let's just leave it like that, and I'll show you the features really quick. I'm not gonna change anything. Right. Oh, give me my pen and tablet back. So the beauty of this, the reason I like Node Omniscope is, first of all, and I was going to rebuild that grade that we did with this guy, but immediately I've got false color on the window. So when I was trying to do that exposure before using display qualifier focus, I've got false color here, so I've got a really good representation of where his skin exposure should be sitting without me having to sample his nose and his chin and all that stuff. I can see what's going on here. I can't access the color page at the minute, so just trust me. But as I adjust gain and offset, the face will literally move. So I've got an instant guide as to where it should be. When I'm doing, now obviously I need to put this into CST mode because the Resolve color management is working inside and outside of the color page. So you need to be in a CST workflow, but it works very well. If I want to see his skin tone, just highlight here. There is a definite offset with the mouse. I'm trying to grab his skin here. Little things like if I highlight the histogram here, it shows you what's going on. If I highlight his face here, it shows me in the scopes exactly where that is. If you press tab, you get the RGB picker straight away on there. You also see there, as I'm doing that, is highlighting in the low, the mid, and the highlights in the vector scope. So you're seeing your vector scope in shadow, midtones, and highlights at the same time. You can do that in Resolve. I will show you that really quickly. But it's just some of those tools that are really good. You've got, it will check for blanking errors. So if you're resizing stuff and you've got a couple of pixels out, it flags up in bright red saying you've got blanking errors. So it's a tool that I use all the time. Let me just come back into Davinci Resolve. And I'm going to go back to the color page. And I just want to show you on the vector scopes here, we can emulate that just to give Resolve scopes their fair credit. If I pop that out and go into my 9 up mode, you can change each vector scope to be low, mid, and then you can pop another one down here that's high. And it's just then going to show me the saturation in my shadows, the saturation in my highlights. That's what it's really useful for, okay? So that can kind of set up. So apologies for the only scope bit. We kind of got it going, but I hope that sort of helped you on your journey and how I use the scopes. Just remember what's on the screen and your vision is what counts, not what the scopes tell you. They're just a guide, all right? Okay.
All right, well done. Thank you. We will go into Q&A. Any questions? Yes, right up front.
Don't ask me anything about Omniscope.
Well, fuck. Too bad.
No.
Okay, so when you're doing node-based color management, for example, would you be putting node after your final CST?
Yes. So you'd want that on your after your color managed CST that's going to take you to 709 or P3 or whatever you're working. You want it after that. Otherwise, it's not going to see the same display. You're going to be looking at a log file essentially. It's that's a sort of helpful flow if you can't take an external feed. All right. Ideally, you want to take an external feed. Running scopes and running your whole monitoring system through an I/O box, even if it's a $99 I/O box, is just a more accurate way to work. All right.
I just had a quick question. If you don't have thousands of dollars to buy a fancy reference monitor and such, I'm over here. Do you have any tips on things you can do with just a Mac laptop screen, making sure that you're outputting good quality color and not?
Yeah, I mean, obviously calibration is everything. You know, if your monitor's not calibrated and you're offering coloring services, it's wrong. Stop doing it. I think in reality, that's the only thing that's going to help you there is your scopes. Okay, so you'll be able to see if you look at an RGB parade and all the whites are lined up, the red, green, and blue channels. You're going to be white. The Max displays now, the new range of iPads. These are giving very good color accuracy out of the box. But mine is still calibrated. I need to do that. But I appreciate, if you're in the field, you're on a laptop, you don't have thousands of pounds to keep calibrating, you just want to do good level, I would just be cross-referencing it on your scopes. Bring up a color chart, like this one's a good one. Just bring that up on your screen, have a look. Does it, okay, you can only go by your eyes, but does it look white? Okay, does that white box actually look white to you? You should see in here very faintly, you're probably not going to see it here, but there's a very faint 2 gray lines here. Okay, you can actually adjust your brightness, contrast, etc. to just get those. You should just be able to not see this one. So bring it up until you can see it, knock it back a bit, and then you should just see a very faint one here. And that's going to help with at least that you're marginally calibrated. If I go to a suite, if I'm working at an external suite, the first thing I do is bring up this, have a look. I can't tell if the monitor's calibrated. I can tell if it's not calibrated. So, if that looks bright pink, I know it's not going to be a good day.
So on calibration, how often do you calibrate and what causes it to fall out of calibration?
Yeah, depending on the quality of your monitor will depend how quickly that shifts. I do mine about once a year. It's not a monthly thing. That's probably down to, or if I feel it's gone out. So if I bring up these bars and I see that it's not good, but I have mine done. I don't do my own calibration. There's good monitors these days that do auto calibration. If I had that, I'd be doing it a lot more regular. But once a year is pretty good for me. If you can do it more, great. But it's not a cheap process if you get someone in to do it.
I mean, we have a little screen reader. I don't know how accurate those are, but
Yeah, the little iCal things. I mean, they're as accurate as the more you spend. So the reason I pay someone to come in, they're going to come in with a £12,000 probe. And also, I don't know how to do it. So I'd rather he walks away and it's certified and done than I'm going, I hope I got that right. All right. Your eyes are good. Bring up this bar particularly is a good one to test. Just check you can just see those double bars.
Any other questions here? Yes. Norman, the legend.
Yes. Okay, so you like the false color in Omniscope.
Yeah.
There's a false color option in Resolve.
Yeah, good luck.
Okay, that was my question. Okay. That's the question. I mean,
is that the answer?
Is it useful?
It's very hard to get it with the CST workflow. It's very hard to get it working. It's very hard to get for me to trust that. Do you have experience with it? I mean, I've really struggled with that false color that's built in.
There's only 10 bands here.
Yeah.
So you can't get a full spectrum.
Yeah, I mean, you don't have the options that you've got in the Omniscope as well are pretty extensive. You don't have to just use the false color scope that I use. But if I compare the two side by side, the Resolve ones give me very different results. I don't know necessarily why. It's going to be to do with color management somewhere in the line. But because you're using it as a plugin in that color managed chain, whereas my Omniscopes, I've got them as it's an external feed, always wins. So if I can get false color on an external video feed, I'm trusting it 100%. Hi.
I'm getting there.
Oh,
I'm
sorry.
getting there. Here we go.
I noticed at the beginning when you were going through your color management, and I've seen conflicting information about this, but when you have your, I'm sure you and Colin have thought about it a lot. When it comes to your input DRT and your output DRT, usually from what I've heard, you usually when you go from a scene referred to a scene referred space, like scene to scene, and you don't set a DRT because you don't want it tone mapped into a scene space.
Correct.
But when you go from scene referred to display referred, you do want that. So when you had the input DRT also set to Davinci, is it good to keep that on, or you want to set that to none?
No, so I would normally have that not set to anything, set to none. Okay. So in this sort of quick example, yeah, I kind of just went into it. I didn't want to start going down the whole world of tone mapping. So to answer your question, yeah, my input DRT would be set to none. I don't want any tone mapping happening. At the end, I tend to work with Davinci. I know luminance mapping is a more popular choice. I like what Davinci mapping does. On certain shots, I can change that. So this is what we're talking about here is the end CST and how the roll-off happens, how the tone mapping is happening. Davinci, for me, is covering all bases, whereas the luminance mapping is obviously looking at luminance. So I think that's where me and Cullen have ours slightly different.
Hey, Darren. You put a preset for your presets in Omniscope?
Oh, yes. So I have
how do you load that in?
Okay, yeah, very good point. I'm going to have to load up Omniscope now to show you. Right. I'm going to also struggle because I've got a mouse offset here, so I can't actually find it. I'll point to where you go. Load up your Omniscope. So this is to answer. I've generated a little preset that I've done for Node Omniscope, so you can just see some of my settings. You download that file. It's a tiny little file. It's a JSON file or something like that. You need to install that into your system, and the easiest way to find out where to put that file is to go to Options, no, QC, oh, I'm going to have to find it, hang on. In the edit page it worked, didn't it? It's one of these, it's either QC or Options, I can't remember which one it is. I've got a mouse offset going there, so I can't work out where to actually click. I'm sorry. But I'm just going to randomly click around.
Maybe you can show them after.
It's the bottom menu of either QC or Options, and it'll show you the path. Has anyone got it in front of them?
Great. We got one question here from
We
someone
can get that posted in the comments, I'm sure.
in chat. Sure, sure. Do you first create a look on the timeline level, or do you just every shot first?
So the look development will come in at the beginning. I'm then going to, using my node tree, yes, I'm going to get anything like film print emulation I'm working with, that's going on straight away. Then I'm grading everything underneath that. But I will be establishing how that looks on various scenes before I literally commit. So yeah, the look, the film print emulation, all the stuff that's going to give it the style is going to come more towards the end of my node tree. Then the color management and the safe stuff is all going to hold true. All this technical stuff that I'm doing is not going to be damaged by any of that film print emulation because I'm very careful what I'm doing with it. But I will always be grading underneath that and keeping an eye on my scopes. So it's not, as you've seen me do here, where it's 1 to 1 to 1 to 1. There's the stuff gone on the end, and then I'm doing that exact process, but underneath a bit more stuff.
In terms of running Omniscope like through an I/O box to an external monitor, can you just sort of describe that process of how you?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, it's very simple. So I've got my Resolve system, and that is coming out. So my particular one is running on a Mac. I've got that Thunderbolt connected to an Ultra Studio 4K, which has got multiple outputs. One output's going to my client monitor. One output's going to my I've got a Flanders Scientific, my grading monitor. And another output is going to another computer. I've got another Blackmagic I/O card in there. You can use any I/O card for Omniscope. It doesn't need to be Blackmagic. I just happen to have a cheap Blackmagic card in there. I've got a HDMI feed from my Ultra Studio going into that I/O card in that computer. I literally load Node Omniscope onto the computer. I'm not using Resolve. And then when I launch Node Omniscope on the Omniscope computer, I just launched Node, and you saw what it was doing here. It was trying to connect to Davinci Resolve. It works with Premiere. It works with all the other stuff as well. So I'll just say connect to Davinci Resolve. It looks for the Davinci Resolve decklink driver, and we're off. I have a signal.
So in that scenario, it's literally you're not even having Node Omniscope on your timeline.
It's not in my Resolve project at all. I'm running it as a dedicated bit of software on the thing. It does actually show up in my things. I've got it installed in there, but you get 2 licenses. So one's running on my dedicated machine, one's on here on my Resolve machine, as you've just seen me do. But it's the key to it is, and I couldn't show it. On the layout, it says there's a checkbox that says "Stay on top." You've got to click "Stay on top," and then it sits on top of Resolve. So when you work underneath, no Omniscope stays at the top. All right, unless you've got it on a dedicated system. It's really easy. It's literally just I/O. There's one feed to the client, one feed to me, one feed to Nope.
Awesome.
I then know that color management's nothing to do with it because it's the output. It's what I'm delivering to the client.
I know there were lots of other questions that people were wanting to ask you, Darren. I'm hoping they can find you during some of the general coaching, or they can ask during your breakout or whatever. Don't worry. If you have questions for any of our presenters, there'll be lots of time to ask that. Encourage you guys to find him and take a picture with him while you're over there. Anyway, guys, give it up for Darren. That was incredible. Thank you so much. And yeah, this is going to be our last panel for today for our stream. This will be the end of our stream for today. The rest of the day will be exclusive breakout segments with some of our presenters for our in-person audience only, which is pretty cool. And also, Now, available at the back there, sign up for the Davinci Resolve Battle Royale. You guys, we're accepting applications. Come hang out. Come step out of that comfort zone. Do something cool. And again, this is brought to you by Action VFX, NVIDIA Studio, and our friends at ASUS.
Can you say more about what it entails?
Yeah.
Making a film, but
Yeah, so we took our team went and shot segments, like shots from a short film, and the two teams are going to be assembling it. They're going to be doing the color correction. They're going to be completing the edits, the sound design, adding VFX, the whole post-production workflow on this, along with guidance from a team leader, which is one of our presenters. So, but we're gonna end the stream for now. If you watched online, thank you. We will see you guys tomorrow. We have wonderful presenters and things happening tomorrow, and we hope you can make it. Thank you all for being here, and we are going to break for lunch, and we'll see you guys later. Have a wonderful rest of the day. Oh, what? What? Oh, yes, food is outside. There is no food inside here. And that is all. Okay. Bye-bye, friends. Thank you.